And good afternoon, everybody. It is the top of the 4 o'clock hour, and you are listening to 90.3 WMSC in Montclair, New Jersey. You're listening to SMC Sports right here. Sean McChesney, Nick Flaherty, and Dan Collins are in the studio. We have a lot to cover today, guys. There's so much to be done today, and we're going to get all to it. We have a huge football show to do. We're going to do 2 hours of football today from 5 to 7. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to both the Giants and the Jets. Both of these teams who I thought could have had, let's just say better week 8s, I would think.
Oh, I thought it went all right.
It went okay, but you know what? We still have a lot to talk about for them. They have a lot to do. And Dan, again, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me on.
No problem, man.
Yeah, welcome to the second week.
Yeah, I have to agree. There could have been different outcomes for each, but I was surprised by one of them, which we'll get into the discussion a little bit later. But that's all I'll leave it at. Absolutely.
We have Week 9 picks, which we will do at the top of the 6 o'clock hour. We'll also talk about who impressed us and who didn't. It's going to be a big football show today, guys. There's not much going on. There was some NBA last night. Both New York teams lost.
Well, there's a surprise.
There's a surprise, exactly.
Surprise.
Locally in hockey, everybody was off. Islanders are in action tonight in Montreal. So that's going to be a huge
tough
game.
matchup for them, too.
Tough
the
matchup.
Canadians are off to an awesome start this year. I know the Devils, you said the Devils are off tonight, right? And
Rangers and Devils are both off
Rangers
tonight.
are headed for Colorado and Arizona over the weekend.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, Islanders only 1 point behind the Rangers. A win tonight could set up a tie.
And John Tavares is back. Big
Tavares
news.
is back. And also, just for the Jets real quick, Ryan Fitzpatrick was announced. He will play on Sunday, so that spells into the favor of the Jets, despite the Jacksonville Jaguars having a very nice young offense. And, what can you say about the Jets' defense in Oakland? They were just ran over by that Oakland offense.
Don't want to say anything about the performance.
Speechless.
It was an ugly performance. As Todd Bowles said in his press conference, he counted 20 missed tackles. I think that just about says it all for Sunday's effort. Really not what they had in mind, obviously, the trip out to Oakland. And all of a sudden, the Jets went out on this road trip to New England and to the West Coast at a 4-1 mark, and they come back home 4-3 after a tough loss with the Pats. And then they, really just lay an egg by the Bay against the Raiders. And I think you have to tip your cap to Oakland. They are really, I think they're on the upswing, and we talked about them all year, Sean, a team that is good for an upset every week, really, and is taking off in the right direction. I think now we're finally seeing it come full circle. Derek Carr looks great. Amari Cooper is an awesome combination. The AC/DC nickname is living up to the hype so far. So the Jets did not have the week they were hoping for.
No, we'll get into all that top of 5 o'clock hour, but first, and this has to be discussed, let's wrap up MLB. First and foremost, before I go on a huge rant, and thank God it's Thursday, I had a couple days to cool off.
It's all right, breathe.
Let's congratulate first the Kansas City Royals. They have waited 30 years for this.
Mm-hmm.
They took advantage of every mistake the Mets made. They basically, great teams know how to come back from great adversity. That's what I've been saying all week. They absolutely deserve to be the world champions at this moment. This team has just come up full circle. They've come back in every round in the American League. They beat Houston. They beat Toronto. They beat the Mets in 5 when in reality it shouldn't even come down to that. But again, before I ran on that, I wanted to express a quick congratulations to the Kansas City Royals. What can you say? They won fair and square.
They did a great job. As they have all year. I was one of the people that, along with others, doubted this team from day one, and I will readily admit I thought they would win about 77 games. I did not think they had the roster to go back to the World Series again, but they got contributions from everyone involved, whether it was Kendrys Morales or Alex Rios or their pitching staff. Just, all around it's an impressive story to watch them all year long, and they came back against the Houston Astros, and they followed that up with being able to take down the Toronto Blue Jays, a team that was scalding hot going into that series after winning 3 in a row against Texas. So, like you said, Sean, you have to tip your cap. They did a great job, and they took advantage of the mistakes that the Mets made.
Dan?
Now, I knew Kansas City was going to eventually compete to go back to the World Series. That game against Houston was Game 4. I kept saying to myself, looks like that's it. Looks like it's going to be Houston-Toronto. And then all of a sudden, I saw the score, and I'm like, are you kidding me?
4 outs from elimination in Houston, and they just came back.
Yeah, it's this team. It's like you have to. That's why in baseball they say you always need to get the 27th out, and that team's a good example of it. from what we've seen.
Absolutely. And you take a look at this Kansas City team, they made history. The Mets, unfortunately, made history in the wrong way. They become the first team in 13 years to have a lead in every game in the World Series and not win the series.
And the first one ever to have a lead in the 7th inning or later in every game as well.
Jerry's Familia, the only pitcher ever with 3 blown saves in the World Series, and 2 of them was more on the defense than himself. I'll give him game 1, but let's face it. And you know what? Let's just get into it right now. I was going to save it before or after the break, but there's not really much more to talk about. Terry Collins, I will give him credit, had a great season, but games 4 and 5 were some of the worst poorly managed games by Terry Collins I've seen in the last 5 years. He's been with their 4 years he's been with this team. And I think right away we just have to start with Game 5. We have to start with Game 5.
Game 5 is the big story. Now, really, Sean, I haven't had the chance to even ask you this question because you've, obviously, and rightfully so, you've been a little upset, and I can't blame you for that.
Still stings.
And it still stings. But, so, where did you want them to, where was the breaking point for you with Harvey? How did you view the whole situation going into that 9th inning? Did you want him out there at all? Did you want him taken out after? Me personally, I thought Terry was right to let him go out there and try and finish the game. Matt wanted the ball. It's what every stud ace pitcher has ever asked his manager to do, to have confidence in him. I thought it was the right move on Harvey's part to try and go out there and end the ball game. To me, where it all went wrong was not taking him out really after the first batter. Mike Francesa said it during the week. You could tell he was overthrowing.
Right.
To
I was
Lorenzo
listening to
Cain.
the same thing. You're absolutely right, and this is my take. I get it. 45,000 people are chanting, "We want Harvey." Terry Collins goes up to him and he says, "You're coming out," and he's like, "No, I'm not. There's no way I'm coming out." I was with the 45,000. I wanted to see Harvey come out of the dugout. Comes out to 7 Nation Army, the biggest ovation I ever heard in Citi Field history. But when the first guy gets on, that's it.
I mean, he was on. He was 3 outs from one of the best playoff performances we've ever seen.
And
really,
I still consider it to be one of them.
under the circumstances. And it was great, but he didn't close the deal. That's the only problem.
Yeah, I look at that overall. I mean, I like it that this kid had so much passion. He wanted to go finish this game, which I get. And I know that puts Terry Collins in a bad spot where, he, obviously every manager takes the blame for it. And obviously he said, I take the blame for it. I think, I don't know, it's a tough one for me. It's like, you want to show confidence. You don't want to say no because then it kind of, in a sense, damages their confidence. But like Nick said, whenever the first sense of trouble, you got to come up and say, that's it. Sorry.
And for the first sign of trouble with Kansas City, that just means putting a runner on base. I even said going into the 9th inning, this Royals offense has been too quiet. Too quiet. So you know what? Lorenzo Cain walks. All right, fine. He was overthrown. That's when I was like, all right, Harvey, you're finished. And I didn't see Collins come out of the dugout. And I'm like, this is not good. My first initial reaction of it being over was before the Mets gave up the lead. When Hosmer hit the double over Conforto's head and Familia comes in with a runner on second base, that's it. To me, that's it. And then you know what else it comes down to? Somehow, with 1 out and a runner on third, the Mets get the break of the century. Wright holds Hosmer on third, and Duda makes a throw that I think 50 Cent could have made better
50 Cent
backwards.
would have hit home plate.
Oh, that was
50 Cent could have made the throw better backwards, and somehow ends up in the 15th row. That right there, I knew it was over. I knew right there. All right, Royals are just going to make us wait for it now, but this thing is over.
Going off of what Dan had said, and I think he hit the nail right on the head. Terry Collins, there was no good result only if the Mets had won the ball game. If the Mets had lost with Harvey on the mound, which is what happened, now he wasn't charged with the loss, but he put him back out there, and everyone questions and says, why wasn't Familia in? He's the guy. He's the closer. Let him go. If Familia comes in and blows the save again, and as Mike Francesa said this week on The Fan, let's not act like he's been so lights out. He's struggled in this postseason. It hasn't gone the way.
Who, Harvey? Or
no,
Familia?
Jarris Familia.
Oh, absolutely.
He hasn't really been great in this series, particularly in the World Series. If Familia comes out and blows the save, then it's how could you take Harvey out? He was throwing the game of his life. It's the game we've been waiting for all these years, and you let Familia ruin it for him. It's not a good situation for any manager to be put in. Unfortunately, it's the spot Terry Collins was put in. And I know everyone wants to say, well, Matt Harvey was selfish. He put himself ahead of the team.
He's
but if
supposed to
you
do that.
if you look at a Roger Clemens, Bob Gibson, Denny McClain, any one of the great aces over the years past. Madison Bumgarner demanded the ball out of the bullpen last year, and you're going to complain that Matt Harvey wanted to stay in this game and finish the job?
I don't blame Matt Harvey for one bit of this, because you are a competitor. You are supposed to go over to your manager and be like, no, I am finishing this game, and we're going back to Kansas City with DeGrom and Syndergaard, and we're winning the whole damn series after this, because that's going to set the momentum. He's supposed to do that. But Terry, and here's the thing, this is the reason that Terry Collins was in a no-win situation, and as a manager, you sign up for that the day you sign that contract.
You're absolutely right.
Dan Worthen and Terry Collins met 2 days before Game 5 and said, we are giving the ball to Familia in the 8th inning. Now, you're not going to take him out in the 8th inning. Obviously, he was dealing. The 8th inning, all right, you let Harvey go out and pitch. He did great. But as you are a manager, and in games 4 and 5, what cost you those games was you let your players run your team. That is the Terry Collins of 2011 and 2012.
He should have stuck to his guns.
That we saw again in the World Series. And you know what? And it goes back to Duda throwing the ball to the plate and we play Game 6. It goes back to Terry Collins letting Harvey come out in the 9th inning. But you know what? You are the manager of this team. You put your foot down. You decide what's right. It may not have been the most popular decision to sit him in the 9th inning or take him out after the Lorenzo Cain walk. But you know what? I personally believe if he had done that, there would have been a Game 6 in Kansas City.
It's the fallacy of the predetermined outcome, as Michael Kay would like to put it. You have to sit there and you wonder, would that have been the case? I understand what you're saying, but the biggest issue, like you said, is that he let the game get hijacked by his team, and that's the unfortunate part. Terry should have stuck to his guns on the issue. If he was quite adamant about this, which I think, I counted it. We heard it 6 or 7 times during the broadcast. Joe Buck and Harold Reynolds and Verducci all said, leave Buck out of this. We're talking about the game. They all said it several times over. They want to get at least to the 8th inning, and they're building towards that. But Familia is coming in to close this game out regardless. And, it was such a resounding theme amongst the broadcast team and amongst Terry Collins and Dan Worthen. I agree with you. You should have stuck with it. Because in the end, you have final say. Because it's the same situation that Grady Little put himself in with Pedro Martinez.
Which got him fired.
And that got him fired. And it's the same situation that countless other managers have encountered. And you know what? You stick to what your gut tells you, not your heart. And I appreciate that Terry Collins wanted to trust his guy and give him a chance. But in the end, it didn't work out.
And you know what? I appreciate it, too. And you know what? Trusting Tyler Clippard in Game 4 is all I got to say about that. I'm not even going to get into that.
Yeah, that was the bigger ones.
And, it goes back to, Harvey and Cespedes hitting on one leg. I know bases were loaded, but he couldn't even put pressure on his leg. I get what Terry was trying to do, but I bet you he won't make that same mistake ever again.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break here on the show. Coming up, we will finish the recap of the World Series, what to expect in the offseason, and then, of course, we will get into our big NFL portion of the show at the top of the 5 o'clock hour with Dan Collins leading the way and Nick Flaherty to follow. 15 minutes past the 4 o'clock hour, you're listening to SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. 973-655-4256 is the number to call to join the conversation on 90.3 FM. Back after this.
Hi, this is Ed Helvey, founder of Montclair State Radio way back in 1966. And you're listening to 90.3 FM WMSC, Upper Montclair, New Jersey. Still the voice of Montclair State.
Makes you feel happy like an old-time movie. I'll tell you about the magic and the free your soul, but it's like
20 minutes past the 4 o'clock hour, you're listening to SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. 973-655-4256 is the number to call to join the conversation. Sean McChesney, Nick Flaherty, and Dan Collins in the studio. We're wrapping up the World Series. We're wrapping up MLB. Pretty good discussion so far. One of the sports team members at WMSC, Mario Papa, called us at the break, and he wanted to point out, which we all knew, of course, this will be the first time in history that a World Series rematch will take place on opening day. And especially now, this should be the Mets' motivation. I said this off air. Let this be their motivation to beat the Royals and outscore them 25-6 in the first series. As they watch that flag go up, as they watch them get their rings, I want the Mets on the field when that all happens. I want them to see it. I want them to see it. I want let that be the motivation to just annihilate them on opening weekend.
Yeah, I would imagine that might serve a a part in it. There will be a few new faces here, but overall it's going to be the same Met team that we saw unfortunately fall in this World Series. But it adds a lot of intrigue now to opening day, and I think it's going to make for even more fun when the season gets underway. Of course, the games, they all matter, but they really start to take on their extra meaning as the season goes on, and I think this will add some intrigue to the first day of the season.
Yeah, for sure. And again, we go back to Game 5. There were a lot of mistakes in the entire series. You trusted Clippard in the eighth in Game 4, and then you trusted him with base runners on. Again, I don't have to go any further than that. You trusted Cespedes to hit with the bases loaded. He couldn't even move when he hit the foul ball off his leg. I understand he's Yoenis Cespedes. I also understand he went 3 for 20 in the series. You trust Harvey to go out for the ninth.
It was a struggle, but I got to be honest with you. I take less issue with sticking with Cespedes and others, and I know he was not physically fit, but he is one of the guys that got them as far as they did.
That I can agree with, and I thank him for that.
Such a pivotal piece and such an important member of this team. All second half long, and I know he struggled at the end, and I know that people want to question his effort level and does he bring it every day? And you may have a right and a feasible argument there, but you can't deny the fact that he's one of the best hitters on the entire roster.
Oh, I agree.
Probably the best when he's at his best. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying you owe it to the guy, but you got to give him the opportunity because he carried you this far.
No, I agree. He carried us this far, but along with him, it was the majority of our homegrown guys in the postseason that got us to the World Series.
Yeah.
I thank Cespedes for all he did. I think without Cespedes, it would have been a much tougher race to win the NL East.
I'm not sure they would have won the East, exactly.
I think if they had won the East, my prediction would have came true, would have came down to the final day against Washington or in that weekend. And you know what? If it did come down to that weekend, we saw the results of the last weekend of the season. The Mets went in the postseason with no momentum at all. And, they just got hot at the right time. Scherzer no hits the Mets. Mets get no hit for the second time at Citi Field that year. They get embarrassed, like 5 hours before, and they barely squeaked out a win on the final day of the season to get 90 games. So who knows how that would have went down. I thank Cespedes. I do think he's the reason we won the NL East. He was the person that got it all together. But for the money that he's going to ask, and it's going to be a lot, it's almost just worth it to say, see you later, thanks, and good luck in your future endeavors.
I think whether he had a big postseason or not, he was gone.
Yeah.
I mean, this doesn't change anything, and that's not a knock on anyone involved, but he wants to be paid. I think he has a right to be paid the way he performed. And I know his playoff run wasn't spectacular, but I don't think that's going to sour him completely.
Right.
I don't think the Mets ever expected to get him back, to be honest. They asked Sandy Alderson, was it worth it? And I agree with him. It was worth it.
Oh, it absolutely
and
was.
It would have been even more worth it had they found a way to get it done in this series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Dan, what are your thoughts?
Well, I thought Yoenis Cespedes, I told you, that guy's, I knew he was always that outfield that any team would want. I mean, you see how he's able to throw guys out at the plate with that good arm he's got in the outfield. And he did phenomenal at the Mets. But whenever you get a superstar like that, you're always have to be prepared. They're going to say, I want this much money. And then you're left with that decision where do you put the team in jeopardy, I guess, money-wise, or do you put I guess next year on the line and say, we appreciate everything you've done, but sorry, we can't pay you that way.
Yeah, there's a reason he's been on 4 teams in the last 3 years. Or, 3 teams.
Well, I mean,
Oakland,
that's
4 teams.
That's via trade. I mean, part of it is the rate. He's been on his first team in the A's. Their whole philosophy is not centered around spending money. That's just not the way that Billy Beane does business. So he was bound to be moved eventually. I'm surprised that Boston didn't hang on to him, really, but they have that great group of young outfielders, so that's really why they moved on from him. And he really got moved from Detroit because they were out of it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it's so much an indictment of his contract or him as much as the circumstances he was under.
And I thought Detroit had all the pieces anyway, just none of it worked. But
they
you know what?
didn't have enough pitching, and their bullpen is very, very suspect. But beyond that, you're right. They had a nice group, and their season, and they were still in it. But then when Cabrera went down, it just it kind of tumbled out of control.
And you know what it is? When you go back to Game 5, and I saw Duda throw the ball into the 5th row over Darno's head, I told my dad, I said, if the next Met doesn't put the ball in the parking lot, I'm throwing the TV at the wall. Because you know what? It was one of those nights, and I remember it was in the 12th inning, and it was getting really late at this point. My dad fell asleep. And he woke up just in time to see Flores strike out to end it. I'm like, look, you're just in time. And then he woke up and the Royals are celebrating on the field. And you know what? That hurt the most. That stung the most. You know, we go to Kansas City, you lose in 6. I can accept the fact we lost in front of their fans. I knew it was going to be tough to go back and win the series, but I had to watch the Royals dance all over Citi Field in a game that should have never been theirs. And I started getting bad feelings when you had bases loaded in the 6th and you only brought in 1 run. That is when it started to hit me like, this is not good.
You know, I was about to touch on that. The Mets had several chances throughout the entire series in each game to blow the game wide open. And you know, listen, the Royals have proven that no lead is safe, really. I mean, they trailed, 9-0 in Toronto in Game 3, or I think it reached 11-2, and they got to 11-9 or 11-8 and had the tying run on base. So they're very, very resilient. But the Mets had a ton of chances to just take the game and blow it wide open.
That's when I knew Toronto was done. My dad texted me because I wasn't sleeping. Mets relievers put me in a coma.
Yeah, well, you know, that'll happen with Addison Reed and the rest of the gang.
You know what? Besides game, I believe it was 4. Addison Reed did fine in the postseason. It was Tyler Clippard that literally put me, you know, under a breathing tube the whole time. But like,
disappointing given they traded to acquire.
They traded to acquire these guys. And Flaherty, that I thought was the worst trade out of the relievers. Thank God I didn't see him in the World Series because, you know, again, another breathing tube that wasn't necessary. So. Bottom line, Mets lose the World Series. I was happy they got there. I was proud of the season, what they had, and I was, you know, proud of the effort that they put in. But at the end of the day, despite the Royals earned it, and I'm going to say that, the Royals earned it. You know, they took advantage of it. Great teams come back from adversity, but I'm not going to sit here and say that the Royals just beat the Mets. The Mets gave it to them.
Yeah.
It was in their hands, and they gave it right to them.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You know, first of all, as you said, there's nothing to hang your head about here.
Absolutely
This is a big step forward. This is probably a year or 2 years ahead of schedule for this Met team. And the bonus is that they got a lot of experience so young that the future is so bright to come, regardless of who's still here. They're going to I think they're going to find a way to work all this stuff out. I'm interested to see the offseason moves they do, and we'll touch on that after the next break.
Right.
But, you know, the future is bright, and they gained a lot of experience. But, you know, and yes, the Royals did earn it. You're right. But the Mets made too many mistakes to expect to win this series.
They made 6 errors in the series. I believe they went 5 for 28 with runners in scoring position. You know, it's just things that can't happen. We're going to take a quick break here on the show coming up. We will finish up with the World Series. We'll touch on the offseason. And then, of course, we'll let Dan Collins lead our discussion of football from 5 to 7 o'clock. Got a lot of football to cover this week. Both New York teams, I thought, put up, you know, such an effort in their Week 8 games that we're going to give them separate segments today. Just because they both earned it. So, 29 minutes past the 4 o'clock hour, you are listening to SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. 973-655-4256 is the number to call. Sean McChesney, Nick Flaherty, Dan Collins on the show. Back after this. 31 minutes past the 4 o'clock hour, you are listening to SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. 973-655-4256 is the number to call. To join the conversation, Sean McChesney, Nick Flaherty, and Dan Collins in the studio. Still got a little bit more World Series to wrap up. We will touch on the offseason. There have been a lot of moves already, managerial and player negotiation-wise that, and of course November 7th is the day the free agents can start signing. That I believe is Saturday.
Yes.
So, and there's a lot of names out there. David Price, Yoenis Cespedes, Alex Gordon.
I was just about to touch on that.
Yep, so we'll do that in a couple more minutes, but there are some stats, though, that I wanted to share. And you know what? And this reminds me of the NLCS a little bit. You look back at the Cubs series, it wasn't just the pitching that got them to the World Series. It was the fact that the offense struck at the right time. And the Mets proved that the young pitching cannot do it all. And that's what they got to go into the next season thinking about. You know, besides Jacob deGrom, I thought Harvey, Matz, and Syndergaard were fantastic.
No question about it.
But
they were really good.
again, there was no offense. Granderson I thought was one of the best in the series, and even he was 5 for 20. He only hit 3 home runs out of those 5. Duda was 5 for 19. He struck out 1,000,000 times. Wright 5 for 24. Cespedes 3 for 20. Murphy 3 for 20 after winning the MVP in the NLCS. Darno, of course, couldn't throw a paper bag out at second base. Let's be real. When did he turn into Mike Piazza at the end of his career? Darno was awful behind the plate. Every time Escobar was on or Dyson was on, I'm like, just go to second base. Like, he doesn't even need to try. Just go. Like, it was awful. It's one of those situations where it's like, why was, almost like, obviously Darno's the guy. You're not going to start Plawecki in the World Series, but like you knew every time the Royals got a fast base runner on base, it was automatically a double for them. Basically, that's what it was. And I believe it was Francesa who said that perfectly. When a Royals base runner who had speed got on base, it was an automatic double, even if it was counted as a single in the scorecards, because Darno couldn't throw anything out. Bartolo Colon could have been stealing second, and he would have came in safely.
Wow.
It was unreal how bad he was.
Keep going. Keep going.
Keep going. You got nothing left, Nick?
No, it's all right. But I agree. There was a lot of, I touched on it before the break. There's so many things defensively that they did wrong and struggled with. And Travis d'Arnaud, to be frank, I'm not sure if he was ever really a top-notch defensive catcher in terms of his arm. I think he calls a nice game, and he's pretty good at blocking balls at home plate. But I think you make a fair point. His arm and his inability to get runners was an absolute killer. But on the flip side of that, they have to do a better job of holding runners on. Mm-hmm. The staff some of that has to fall on the pitching staff. How active on the bases these Royals are. You got to do a better job than that.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if they even looked at tape in that 6 days that they were off before they went to Kansas City. But again, that's going to come on in experience. And you know what? I'm not saying that the Mets are going to be in the World Series again next year, but the Royals set the standard on how this is supposed to work. Now the Mets have the experience. Now they can take that in the next season. Your first step now, you have to win the NL East again. When you get into the playoffs, obviously now the expectations are now you have to win the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And because that's on every team. And you look at what happened, the Mets were supposed to make a push at 500. Then they won the division. Now you're already exceeding expectations. Then you win the pennant. You're over-exceeding expectations now, and you lose the World Series. Next year, now your expectations, you win the whole damn thing. A lot of pressure on this young team.
Yeah, before we get touch base, I guess, the free agents, I think the Mets, just over the roster, obviously, so you're probably not going to have Cespedes back. Who knows what's going to happen with Daniel Murphy. I think this Mets team, pitching-wise, they're pretty stacked. They should really look into, if any, second baseman, if any, or just try to see what they have in their minor league system. But definitely, they need to get a solid catcher with experience. I don't know who's out there. I think AJ Pierzynski's went out there, I think.
No, I don't think so.
They don't need a catcher.
They don't need a
catcher.
Darno
is the everyday guy.
Darno needs to get better at throwing runners out. He hasn't thrown a runner out since September 30th.
Oh.
So Darno is the guy, and he will be for a very long time, but he needs to get better behind the plate. His offense has gotten a lot better. He's done better at blocking behind the plate, but he's got to get better at throwing runners out. And even, in the Cubs series, in the Dodgers series, every time I saw that runner break, I was like, here we go again. Now another runner in scoring position. Like, he couldn't throw anybody out. You could have had the Grim Reaper running on second base again, and he's got skeleton legs. He's still beating Darno's throw. Like, that, Darno's going to be the catcher for a long time, and that's what they're going to have to work on in spring training, throwing runners out. That's going to be his key going into spring training. And, you're right, Cespedes is most likely gone. Murphy, I don't know. Maybe his value went down the World Series enough where everyone was like, there's Daniel Murphy, and the Mets can re-sign him. So who knows where Murphy's going to end up. But when it comes to the farm system, Dilson Herrera is one day going to be the guy. It's just one of those things where he's going to be the guy, and it's just going to be one of those things. Now, touch base on the NFL, or not the NFL, the MLB offseason. Nick, who are your guys that you're looking at?
So free agent wise, since I have the list up here of the top 10 guys, they're listing obviously them out, and this was without Yoenis Cespedes being figured into the equation, Daniel Murphy being figured into the equation. But obviously you have Murphy, you have Cespedes, who Cespedes is going to draw a ton of interest. Mm-hmm. Murphy had a great postseason, and that'll help his stock. Obviously his World Series wasn't great, but I still think he's going to probably be due for a payment at some point from one of these teams. But Justin Upton is available, coming off of a a decent year in San Diego. He wasn't spectacular, but he played well. He's one of those guys that if you can get him while he's hot, he's really going to put together a big year. Jason Hayward coming off of a nice year with the Cardinals. I'm not so sure if that's someone the Mets would be looking into. They need more right-handed power. I think Upton is someone that would be on their radar. It's just if you're going to pay Upton, and then why not pay Cespedes? So
Right.
I get it. Upton will probably come cheaper, but I'd really rather prefer to pay Cespedes at this point. David Price, we mentioned him earlier. He'll be available as a free agent after not staying with the Jays. I don't know. I would imagine he'll probably be still in the running with Toronto, and they'll seek to keep him on board. But there's been some front office turnover there, as it is with Alex Anthopoulos moving on, and Mark Shapiro taking over as president of the baseball operations. You got Ian Desmond available, Johnny Cueto, Jordan Zimmerman. That's a big name that could potentially impact the Mets season next year. Alex Gordon will be available, and I don't know where Kansas City will go with that. They had a problem paying free agents. We saw them turn down Billy Butler last year. So that's an interesting one. Zach Greinke is available. Jeff Samardzija, Matt Wieters, and, of course, Ben Zobrist is in there as well. You got Howie Kendrick. I think Chris Davis is probably the only one that'll stay put where he is for sure. We know he's probably going back to Baltimore.
It's going to be a very interesting offseason, I personally believe. All those guys on that list, when you look at Zobrist, you look at Cespedes, you look at...
Zobrist had a great World Series, too. Did a lot to help himself.
Killed the Mets in the World Series.
Also, you have Denard. I don't know if anyone said Denard Span. There's Doug Fister, Ian Kennedy, Gerardo Pereira.
Parr is an interesting one. He's a really talented hitter. He had a great run with the Orioles at the end. Unfortunately for them, the season didn't end on such a high note, but he was really putting together a nice stretch run. Span's also an interesting player. The problem with Span and Fister, though, such an injury-prone year last year, both of them missed so much time. You don't know what they have, really. I know Span came back, and you got a little bit better of an idea there, but Fister, I don't think, pitched very much at all this year. And we'll see. I know Hisashi Iwakuma is another one available from the Mariners, but there's going to be a collection of guys that teams are going to be after. I would imagine that Zobrist is someone that's on the Yankees' radar when it comes to second base, and also because he can play several positions. He can play first and short, third, the outfield positions as well. So a lot of different room to work them in. You could also throw Howie Kendrick in that mix.
I think anybody playing second base over Steven Drew.
Everyone that's not named Steven Drew and Dustin Ackley.
But Sean Martin asked me, he goes, would you trade Murphy for Steven Drew? I go, I'd rather play without a second baseman. So
fair enough.
Yeah, it's as you go back for Steven Drew, Nick, you guys, I know, Sean, you're a Mets fan, but Nick, you probably agree. Very, underachieving, I guess you could term it, for Steven Drew. His batting average was so low.
Well, it's all in terms of what you expected him to do. I didn't think he was going to be any good to begin with.
And yet he had near 20 home runs.
Yeah, he was a hard guy to figure out. He had a few weeks where he would come out and just absolutely mash, and he would get over 200, and then he went straight back down. One of the better accounts on Twitter this year was, is Steven Drew 200 yet?
It's the story of Jason Bay in a Mets uniform.
Right, exactly.
Believe me, I understand.
We all have our hits and misses as Yankee and Met fans when it comes to the franchise moves, but I agree. The Yankees will seek second base help, and the biggest issue going into next season for them will be the Greg Bird situation, how that plays in at first base. And I think from a Mets standpoint, we know Michael Conforto will be here next year. He's going to be one of the guys in left field.
He has to be.
Yeah, he's
now
shown
gone?
a lot of talent, a lot of ability. So he will be one of the guys, but you got to throw in some right-handed power. You got to find some right-handed help, and it wouldn't be a bad idea to keep Murphy on board because he can play third. It's just a problem of how much can you pay a super utility man.
Right.
Yeah, I was just kind of just trying to calculate the names. The Mets, regardless of Cespedes, because next year, he said Confronto, he obviously did really good. He did really good from what I've seen. And you'd have Confronto at left, you'd have Granderson, and then you'd have, and then Lagares, you'd factor him in there. If just Cespedes' departure, it just gives the other guys a chance to step up. And the chance is there, they got to take it, and they got to produce.
Sean, as a Met fan and someone that follows the team avidly, do you think Lagares can be a viable replacement in center field? Defensively, he's an ace.
Absolutely. They take Cespedes out every other day.
Just not half the hitter that
he needs to get better at the plate.
Yeah,
that I have to admit. And you know what? I do believe that Conforto and Lagares are the future of this outfield. I believe they have been. Since
depends
they both
on the
came in.
move. The biggest option they've got to help the team is seeking a trade and trying to bring in some pieces. And listen, you don't want to give away any one of these young arms, but
Right.
I think if you're going to move one, and we had talked about this a bit last week on the show that Zach Wheeler was a name that was in the Gomez deal going to Milwaukee. He might be a name that's in play once again here. So it's an interesting one, and what's your take on that as a Met fan and how you view the team's options going forward?
They got a lot of options. Obviously, there are guys that they're going to lose. There's a lot of free agents coming out of this Mets team. Some I expect could be re-signed. Cologne, they talked about. Uribe and Johnson have been talked about. Cespedes,
Those
unlikely.
are good guys to bring back on the bench
Cespedes, unlikely. Murphy, who knows? Maybe his value went down enough, but we'll wait and see.
That's-
But as for now, you only wait and see. You got a couple days before free agents can be signed. And again, it's going to be a great period. A lot of big names there. So we'll wait and see. We'll take a quick break here on the show. Coming up, we will finish up with MLB offseason and then get in the NFL top of the 5 o'clock hour. 973-655-4256 is the number to call to join the conversation on SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. Sean McChesney, Nick Flaherty, Dan Collins. Back after this. All right, 47 minutes past the 4 o'clock hour. You're listening to SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. 973-655-4256. Sean McChesney, Nick Flaherty, Dan Collins talking MLB. Now we have Lucas to come in, and he wants to talk MLB trade and free agency as we start the offseason. You're on the show, man. What's going on?
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you? And what did you want to talk
Good.
about?
I was wondering for the Yankees if there's any way maybe you think that you can move A-Rod and Sabathia for Harvey and DeGrom.
Yeah, I don't see that being a possibility there.
Not happening.
I wouldn't think so.
They're close to untouchables on the Mets side of things, and CC and A-Rod are
CC's a good pitcher.
they're at the point of being, CC in his day. I would take CC any day over any guy, but right now not really his turn.
no.
Yeah, I have to agree. CC had his day, but you know what?
did.
CC and A-Rod for Harvey
There's
and
a better
DeGrom
chance of Alex retiring, which could still happen.
Could still happen. But you know what? It's just CC and A-Rod are way past their prime. That would just kill the Mets if that ever happened.
And then, sorry to interrupt. And CC Sabathia, he's not the 2009 ALCS MVP he was.
No.
Right.
He's not good.
Or the 2012-13 game, 17-game winner.
His knees are bad, and he's just.
But he had like a
mess.
3 ERA before he went into alcoholism.
He also had more no decisions than anybody in the American League. So.
Yeah, it wasn't. It really wasn't his best year. I don't think he. Listen. I mean, as a Yankee fan, I'd sign up for it, but
Oh, of course you would. You'd win the World Series next year with
Yeah.
those two.
yeah,
So
I think Lucas is gone.
and I heard the laugh. Thanks for the call, Lucas. So, Harvey and DeGrom to the Yankees. Now, I think Harvey will be a Yankee one day, but I don't think we're getting CC in return.
Can I ask,
no.
where does this whole concept come from with Met fans?
I just think Harvey's going to go for the money. I think the Yankees will.
So
offer
why
it.
is it that you see you're stereotyping us? There you go again. We're in a
What do you
new
mean
direction
stereotyping?
here. We're going in a new direction here. We're going young.
you
We're
going
starting.
in a new
I
direction?
hope not. I can't sit through this stuff any longer as it is.
You know what? Again, it's another offseason. The question is, are you? You thought you were doing it in 08, and then bam, you signed half the American League and won
Which
the World
is a
Series.
very real possibility right
of
now
happening
because
again. You're right.
the last time the Yankees felt that they had to take some action, they did take very radical action. And who knows if that's the case. Frankly, I would prefer in certain positions on this roster, I would like to see them go younger. I'm not against Rob Refsnyder being the second baseman. I would love to see Greg Bird stick around with this team next
Right.
year. I'd like to see Aaron Judge get an opportunity to play with this team come next year. And I understand that Gary Sanchez and Jorge Mateo might be really talented young players in their system, but they passed on trading Mateo, who is a single-A shortstop, who is, I think, 19 years old, when they just traded for a shortstop who's 24 and has a bright future ahead of him. They could have traded Mateo for extra bullpen help, namely Craig Kimbrell, and they passed on that. That's my only thing with some of the young kids. I don't think you need to hang on to all of them. You need to focus on certain ones. I think Bird has showed more than enough to prove he belongs here. He can be a legitimate guy and a player that belongs, and unfortunately, you have Mark Teixeira at first, and hopefully if Teixeira stays healthy, then that'll make things feel a little bit better. But they're going to have to find another position for Bird if that's the case, and I think that's a terrible idea. I think it stunts his growth.
I think that trade would cost Sandy Alderson, Terry Collins, David Wright, and we'd
Well, it
probably
was a
blow up
good
City
thing
Field.
it's a good thing that the trade and the phone call was was not really, that it's not something that's going to be legitimately thrown around, right, Sean?
Yeah, I would be very confident that trade would not happen.
Yeah. Let's make one thing clear here beyond that phone call, folks. The Yankees and Mets, as Mike Francesa put it yesterday, will never, ever help each other in any way. Mm-hmm. That's just how it's going to be.
Right.
Doesn't matter if they're opposite leagues or not. The Nets and Knicks don't help each other, and the Rangers and Islanders and Devils don't work together either. Doesn't matter. It doesn't go that way.
Right.
There's never, all these people who want to call WFAN and tweet about, how about, this one and that one from the Yankees for Harvey, and it's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen.
It would never happen.
No way.
I don't think,
No
especially
way.
Because
like
neither
that.
side could live down getting the trade wrong and helping the other.
Not to mention, I think the 7-line army would burn Citi Field to the ground.
Yeah.
If it happened.
Yeah, particularly them, because the Yankee fans would just take whatever they get.
Yeah. So, you got to love the 7-line army. Now, I really want to sit there next year.
They're a great fan base.
They really are.
A great fan group, not fan base.
They were
They're
at
a
every
great group.
playoff game, and you know what? I don't care if it's 7-2 in the 12th inning and you're 3 outs from elimination. I disagree with the fans who left the ballpark. I was disgusted as they were, but you know what?
Well,
you still kind of want to see the last out of the World Series. It's a World Series game, but those fans in center field stayed until it was over and more. They were there when the Mets came back on the field.
I was going to say that they interacted with the players,
yes,
right, when the team came out. Yeah,
I believe most of them stayed because remember the whole stadium was empty. There weren't that many who stayed, but I believe they were part of it who did. They were at every playoff game till the last out.
Yeah.
Whether it was a blowout or not, they were there. Whether it was disgusting or it was great, they were there. Give them credit for being one of the biggest fan bases in baseball this year, traveling all over the country.
They
to
were
see
like
this
a
team
soccer-style support group.
Play.
Too.
They were.
They awesome.
They made themselves known for who they were.
Yeah, they did a great job, and just to touch on it, the atmosphere at Citi Field was fantastic.
You couldn't take that away from the fans.
The place was rocking from day one. Mm-hmm. It was right up there with how great Wrigley was this year. Wrigley was unbelievable.
And Wrigley, for any Mets fan who says, "Oh, Wrigley was easy," you are sadly mistaken.
Yeah,
it was not easy.
That place was raucous. It was a raucous crowd.
Game 4, they were up 8-1, and I was still shaking. I didn't know what to expect.
They showed a lot of commitment. The Cubs fans, they're ready, and they're another team with a very bright future. But the atmosphere was great there, and the atmosphere in Houston was also awesome to see this year. I can't speak for the atmosphere at Yankee Stadium because the Yankees took all the atmosphere out of the ballpark in the wild card game. But tip your cap to the Mets fans. They came out, they supported the team, did a great job, and overall it made it. I think it made the playoffs a lot more fun this year. When you got to include teams like the Mets and the Cubs were back in for the first time in a while. You had the Mets involved, just a whole host of new faces. You had the Cardinals are still there, and Kansas City's yes, they were there last year, but they're a relatively new face, and the Astros getting back involved. It made for a very fun and I guess you could say diverse pennant race down the stretch into the playoffs and playoff rounds. They were really entertaining.
Exactly. Current weather update here at Montclair State University. It is 66 degrees and very cloudy. It looks like a very gloomy day outside.
Yeah, it's a dreary day, but it's awfully warm for November. Can we get to some football weather?
We got 75 tomorrow. We have 61 on Saturday, but we're going to get some very cold lows this week. Got 39 on Saturday. You got a high 55 on Sunday, but a low of 34.
Thank you. Some colder football weather.
Going to get some rain. We're going to be in the 50s and 60s all of next week. We'll take a quick break here on the show. Coming up at the top of the 5 o'clock hour, we will start with Giants and Jets with Dan Collins. And, of course, we will take that into 6 o'clock when we do our picks. That is the MLB season. We did 8 months of coverage for it. It is over. Time for the offseason. Time for teams to start rebuilding. And more importantly, it is time to find out who's going to make that push to next October. 55 minutes past the 4 o'clock hour, you're listening to SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. 973-655-4256 is the number to call to join the conversation. Sean McChesney, Nick Flaherty, Dan Collins. Back after this.
Top of the 5 o'clock hour here. You are listening to 90.3 WMSC, Upper Montclair, New Jersey. Number is 973-655-4256. I'm Dan Collins here on SMC Sports alongside Sean McChesney and Nick Flaherty. And we had some unexpected action in the National Football League, the Giants and the Jets. First, we go to the Giants. And, guys, I know you're not Giants fans, but with the Saints, your overall take?
Let me start it off by saying I don't care if you put up 49 points. You're Eli Manning. You put up 6 touchdowns. You could put up 49 points for all you want. The fact of the matter is your defense let up 52. You
Couldn't
can
stop running water. What was
really,
that?
You could
Yeah,
say you could put the 49 points as a positive all day long, but that was embarrassing.
Yeah, no, dude, no question about it. I mean, that defense, I think this is probably like the lowest point I think I've seen with the defense as compared to the previous couple games. And as we all know, the Saints beat the Giants 52-49, which, look at a couple of stats. Eli Manning went 30 for 41 with 6 touchdowns, a career high, 350 passing yards. And he actually passed, he moved to 11th place all time on the touchdown list past Joe Montana. Drew Brees, obviously, he had another heck of a game, 39-50, 7 touchdowns. The game-tying one with 36 seconds left. And obviously, the way that fourth quarter unfolded, I didn't see, I kept getting updates. The Tremaine McBride fumble return, I didn't honestly expect it, just by how questionable the defense is. But the one thing that doesn't sit right with me, and like I've said, like I mentioned it briefly before the show and during break, the Brad Wing penalty, just the timing. Let's just say they did go to overtime and lost. I mean, okay, I take the loss, move on. But just the timing. And I was just reading something. He said his face mask was grabbed first before he grabbed Willie Snead's. They weren't going to throw a flag. And then one official goes in and throws a flag anyway and gives him the face mask. That put the Saints in field goal territory. 50 yards later, that's it.
Well, it was the correct call to make on the field. I don't think they went about it the right way at all. Obviously, they made a terrible mistake in the way they handled throwing the flag. A lot of, there's been a lot of issues all year with the referees to begin with, and this was just another prime example of what's gone wrong with these guys. And, I agree. Brad Wing, maybe he was, grabbed by the face mask, and if that's the case, then, he has a right to be upset, and the Giants have a right to dispute the call as well. But he ended up grabbing Willie Snead, and that's the bottom line. The Saints, the defense for them as well was nothing special. Eli Manning put together a fantastic day. He's one of the first quarterbacks to lose a game like that. I think he is the first quarterback actually to lose a game where he threw 6 touchdown passes and play as well as he did. But this is the problem with this Giants team. They're very hard to figure out. The defense is a disaster.
And I thought the offensive line was trouble, but look at a couple more.
The offensive line is trouble.
Odell Beckham Jr., 3 touchdown catches, and Dwayne Harris had a heck of a game, 2 touchdowns, and obviously look at the side for the Saints. Brandon Cooks and Willie Snead had 2 touchdowns a pair. Benjamin Watson and Marcus Colston had 1 too. Kai Forbath, the game-winning 50-yard field goal as time expired. Saints go to 4-4. The Giants fall 4-4. They head to Tampa Bay this Sunday, and along with Jason Pierre-Paul, who I've been reading has been experimenting with new gloves for.
It ain't gonna make a difference.
Nah, as much as I like Jason Pierre-Paul, I don't really. You just have to try to picture, trying to block someone without an index finger. It's impossible. Unless
it's a good thing he doesn't have to block.
But yeah, actually, and just a couple of history was made with this game. 101 points in this game, third most in the NFL game, behind Redskins Giants in 1966. Bengals 113. Bengals Browns in 2004, 106 points. And 13 touchdown passes combined, around 1,000 total yards. Eli Manning, obviously, as we know, he moved to 11th place all time, passing Joe Montana 274. And obviously, it's the
sacred name in my house. Don't wrong Joe Montana ever. That is Notre Dame glory right there.
And then, obviously, they're still in first place.
He's Notre Dame?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, national championship in 77, Cotton Bowl win with the flu against Alabama.
That's right.
And obviously, they're still in first place in the NFC least, I'm going to term it at this point.
I didn't even know if there.
I don't even know if that's an adequate word for this. This is a disaster.
No,
the Cowboys
what
are
is
ravaged
the
by
NFC
the injuries.
East? Now, here's the thing.
It's terrible.
Here's the thing going into Tampa Bay. A few weeks ago, I picked the Giants comfortably, but Tampa Bay has been playing big spoiler lately.
No question.
The upset against Atlanta in overtime this week.
Oh, I forgot that one.
Good old
3
Atlanta.
turnovers forced.
Wow,
yes. It was unbelievable that the performance they put up in the Georgia Dome, the performance they put up in Week 2 in the Superdome. You get the Giants at home.
And they should have beaten Washington
And they
the
should
week
have beat
before at
Washington.
FedEx Field. They blew a 24-point lead.
And you get
sorry about that. And you got Kirk Cousins' reaction, which with the
because you do want that.
when Washington wins the NFC East, it's going to say, "Do you like that?"
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then
Excuse me, you do like that. Excuse me.
You like that?
Yeah, I still think it's fine. And just a quick notes: Victor Cruz most likely will not be playing this Sunday. He's out. Jason Pierre-Paul making his season debut.
Who cares?
And now over the Jets, and obviously I saw bits of this game, and I was particularly speechless about the way it went. As soon as Ryan Fitzpatrick hurt his finger, from what I read, I knew they were in trouble as soon as Geno Smith got on that field. And I saw the way Oakland was putting points up. I'm like, this doesn't look good. And I thought the Jets were going to really give the Patriots a run for their money, and now they're 3 games out.
Didn't look good, to say the least.
It really didn't.
The Raiders' offense is at a level where it's pretty dynamic. You have the additions in the offseason of Michael Crabtree. They drafted Amari Cooper. Andre Holmes, out of nowhere last week, had a game and a half.
Right.
He did pretty good. And then and then Jack Del Rio. I mean, he's been doing a phenomenal job trying to keep them in there. And obviously, they've got Denver in that division, which obviously that's going to give them a good.
The division
motivation.
is probably out of reach at this point. They're looking more at the wild card, but you got to like your chances of that. They're 4-3. Big game this week in the Steel City against the Steelers.
Without
at Heinz Field.
Le'Veon Bell.
Without Le'Veon Bell, a
yep.
team that now lacks balance in its play calling abilities. Really, I like Oakland, the way they're going. Carr is playing lights out. You have as I mentioned earlier, the AC/DC connection, him and Amari Cooper.
There was no
Great
AC
nickname.
last week either.
Yeah.
There wasn't much.
You're absolutely right. There was
But you
no
know what?
AC.
You know what? Let's save Jets for Flaherty when he goes on in about 5 minutes. But Dan, going on the Giants though, this NFC East wide open to anybody. Washington's got New England this week.
No
Philly
question
and
about
Dallas are going to beat the hell out of each other on Sunday
the
night.
loser. I mean, the Eagles are in better shape. They'll be 3-5, but the Cowboys really have to have this one. 2-6 is going to be entirely too deep a hole to dig out.
I think, and
2-5 might be asking a lot at this point as well.
And obviously, look at the game Sunday. I mean, I expected Dallas was going to take all that frustration, and then just welcome Seattle, I should say, in that case, and beat them. And obviously, it was more like that game. There's no action. Obviously, then what happened with Lockett? That was a little Ricardo Lockett. That was a little.
It was a clean hit.
I mean, it was clean.
He got decleated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, no question about it. I mean, it was a clean hit, and I makes you wonder if this. And then of course, obviously with Dallas, I saw Dan Bailey had all the field goals, and obviously
Best kicker in the league.
Dan Bailey's been a fantasy hero to many teams.
He is awesome.
And then make sure with Greg Hardy. I mean, he had that huge interception. I thought they were gonna just grind it in to the end zone, and then just score. And I was pretty surprised by that. But it just makes you no matter how how much crap the offense is, as long as you got good defense, you're pretty much intact. And
I think the biggest problem with the Cowboys right now, and I've had this conversation with my dad a couple of occasions since the Sunday game against Seattle. The play calling is just not good enough, particularly in the red zone. They are so conservative the way they call the offense. They don't trust Matt Castle, clearly. They don't trust him really at all. And, the unfortunate issue here is, as you said, Dan, they get the interception. They get down to the red zone, and they don't cash in there. You throw in Darren McFadden had a long run down to the 5-yard line. A holding penalty takes it back. But there's such conservative play calling. Everything is a 5-yard dump off to Darren McFadden or Cole Beasley. They didn't get the ball to Des Bryant, who was demanding the ball. And I understand people want to say there goes Des again, but I think Des has a right, frankly, in that game, in that moment, trying to come back and get the W. He has a right to demand the football. Just not good enough in the play calling department for Dallas, and the Cowboys have to do a better job going forward here. You look at this matchup against the Eagles. It's a Philly team that struggled really throughout the season. You had that nice 2-game win streak to get to 3-3, but overall not really getting the job done. The Cowboys have a chance to win this game at home, but Sean, as a Cowboys fan, they don't feel that confident to begin with.
But
absolutely. I mean, you're right, going into Sunday night against Philly. Philly's obviously got the upper hand, but
who knows?
they're in Dallas.
And it's DeMarco Murray's return.
Exactly. He's going to get booed out of the building.
Here we go. We'll have to listen to that for 37 times.
Wait until Martin calls in about 20 minutes. We'll get to hear more of it.
That's just a quick down. Then, of course, you got Sunday night Eagles, Cowboys, and then I don't want us to take too much away from the football. Then Monday night, it's Bears, Chargers. With that, we're going to take a break. We'll come back on the air to SMC Sports. 973-655-4256 is the number to call. Dan Collins with Sean McChesney and Nick Flaherty. We're back after this.
Hi, this is Ed Helvey, founder of Montclair State Radio way back in 1966. And you're listening to 90.3 FM WMSC, Upper Montclair, New Jersey. Still the voice of Montclair State.
Makes you feel happy like an old-time movie. I'll tell you about the magic.
All right, and we're back here on WMSC 90.3 FM, listening to SMC Sports. 14 minutes after the 5 o'clock, top of the 5 o'clock hour, Nick Flaherty, Sean McChesney, and Dan Collins. We opened the 5 o'clock hour with the Giants, talked Big Blue and that big mess, really, in the Big Easy against the New Orleans Saints. An absolute disaster on the defensive side of the ball. And now we can transition to Oakland, and unfortunately, California wasn't so beautiful for the New York Jets. Dan, as you had mentioned earlier in our first segment, what a defensive disaster.
No question about it. Obviously, I can't pin this on Ryan Fitzpatrick. Obviously, it's just a whole disaster. And you said earlier, that many missed tackles, that's disturbing statistics. And obviously, you have Charles Woodson intercepting like 1 or 2 passes, I think.
It was one.
It was one. And it
was an interesting tweet this week that was Geno Smith has to learn 75% of the earth is covered by water. The other 25 is covered by Charles Woodson. And he was as spectacular as he has been in his career the last 3 weeks of the season.
You know what I took away from this? And first thing I wrote down, Jets defense was torn apart. Derek Carr did an unbelievable job getting to the Jets defense. He threw 4 touchdowns, 333 yards. The Jets defense, they missed, 20 tackles?
Yeah, Todd Bowles counted on the weekly film review, 20 tackles missed. And that's just stuff. This is, let's get away from the whole, it was, blatant, a poor performance defensively and the Jet defense wasn't the Jet defense. How about the lack of effort that was shown here? This was not the type of performance that's indicative of how good the defense is, frankly. They didn't show up. They didn't come to play. That's what disappointed me about watching this game. Again, I think you have to tip your cap and give some credit to Derek Carr and the performance that he put forth out there. He put together a really impressive game, making several, I guess as Merrill Hodge put it on ESPN, high-caliber NFL throws. This guy is legit. Sean, what do you think about Derek Carr and the silver and black so far?
The silver and black is slowly starting to get more intimidating in the NFL. Like we had said many weeks ago, they got off to a great start, and you know what? And they're beating the teams that they need to beat. Sure, there were tough losses, but that Jets game at home was a must-win, and you know what? They absolutely embarrassed the Jets on their home turf.
They took it to them. 4 touchdowns out of, Derek Carr. The defense was incredible on the Oakland side, I should specify. Yes.
Because the Jets' defense, I think they missed a flight to Oakland that night, especially the pass rushing.
That would have been better.
Derek Carr wasn't sacked once. You take a look at, the Jets got a lot of holes to fill when playing Jacksonville this week, and we'd spoken about it during the week. This is the biggest must-win for the Jets this season. And you know what? You get Fitzpatrick back. That's a positive on your side. Let's see how he can play with apparently a broken thumb.
Dan, your thoughts on the game?
Well, I look at some. I was honestly surprised. I had the Jets. I never expected it to unfold the way that it exactly did. But when your consistent quarterback, Ryan Fitzpatrick, when he goes down and he's injured, that's obviously going to make an obstacle. And obviously Geno Smith, you look at the way Geno did, he didn't do all that well. And I just think this, like I said, they have to beat Jacksonville because guess who comes into town after that? Rex Ryan and Buffalo. So they got
knock. Who is it?
Big Thursday night home game.
Thursday night
next week. Yeah, big Thursday night game at MetLife. As you said, Rex Ryan comes in what I could only presume is a vengeful mood, not so much on the Jets, but I guess on the New York media, the way Rex had that kind of relationship.
And also another note with Jacksonville and the Jets. I don't know if any of you read John Idzik, the former Jets GM. He's an executive. He's part of that management team on Jacksonville. So they got some former faces coming in. So
I think the Rex thing is going to be a more interesting situation as that game unfolds, and you're going to see the old style of football that Jets used to play, the very aggressive, more penalties being taken, things like that, and of course Todd Bowles' style of play and the overall brand that he puts out there. Now transitioning a little bit away from that Buffalo game and away from that disaster in Oakland. Sean, you brought it up this weekend against Jacksonville. Things to look for in this matchup. Obviously, the Jags have an impressive young quarterback. Blake Bortles in his second season taking steps forward, put together some nice performances this year. Really nice game against the Bills in London, a game that the Jags almost threw away, but they came back and won at the end. What are you looking for in this matchup for the Jets to get the job done at home?
I look for the defense to step up, especially in the pass rush. You're going to look at guys like Leonard Williams to step up. You know, you're going to look at guys, especially in the secondary. You obviously got to look at Cromartie to step up again. He had an
Has
awful
to be
game
better. Has
in
to
Oakland.
be better.
You got to look for Revis to step up. And you know what? This is not an easy game for the Jets on all cylinders. You know, Jaguars at 3-4, I believe. You know, they've got an opportunity to be 500.
Yeah, I think 2-5, but I mean they've been in. I was gonna say, they've been in just about every game they have played this year.
Let me double check on that. I believe it's 3-4 though. But the fact of the matter is, after a crushing loss to Oakland, I don't see that defense falling apart like that again. The guy's got to step up. Fitzpatrick has to prove that he can play. Obviously, we know he's not 100%. Yeah. Obviously, we need to see if he can throw the ball.
He's not the only New York football player using a protective glove this week. He is going to wear a special glove on his left hand to try and guard against anything that could involve an injury there.
Well, he's the New York football player that's using that guard because he was injured in a football game. So we'll leave that at that. But the point is, you look for Fitzpatrick to see if he can play with it. You look to see how the receivers are going to do, how Ivory is going to do. They've all got to come into one because you lose this game at MetLife to Jacksonville, you're in big trouble with Buffalo coming into town on a short rest week.
Dan, what are you looking for in this matchup?
I think the Jets, first of all, offense has to step up. And obviously, though, they were left a little short with Fitzpatrick getting injured. I mean, obviously, you can't put. And I don't think Geno Smith's really. I never thought Smith was all that good as everyone's
join the club and get in line.
But I think it's offense. The defense has to step it up. Obviously, they have to watch Bortles. You got to watch all that talent and whatever all those guys in Jacksonville.
Alan Hearns is putting together a nice year as well. They've got a couple running back out of Alabama as well. They've had some additions there on offense. So, I agree. They have to be able to account for the weapons on the offense for Jacksonville. Watch Blake Bortles, that read option look that Jacksonville will go with from time to time. The Jags defense really isn't that bad either. They've played relatively well this year. For me, the biggest thing that I'm looking for in this matchup, I will be there Sunday actually in MetLife. So,
yeah, because you got season tickets, right?
No, my uncle has season tickets, and I appreciate his inviting me to every home game.
You go to every
but
home game.
By default, I do go to the home games. And that, it's an interesting situation as a Colts fan, kind of trying to blend in and just not get beaten up too bad. But what I'm looking for in this matchup, and for Gangrene to have success, I think there needs to be a steady diet of Chris Ivory. He needs to be involved in the game plan, especially with Fitzpatrick hurt. The offensive line has to go ahead and do a better job in pass protection, try and worry, not to worry too much about an injury situation with Fitzpatrick, because next up might be Bryce Petty, young kid who's not quite proven yet.
And obviously, I know there's not a whole lot of time left before we go to break, but we have obviously some developments with the Lions and the Colts. Some changes.
Yeah, there was on
can't believe we didn't get into that
the
yet.
end with my team. I was figuring we would get there, but after the break. But why not? We can go right into that right now. Dan, as you mentioned, the Lions removing the president and GM of the organization. They're taking steps towards a rebuild, and really this opens the door to Matthew Stafford being removed as the quarterback of the
I'd have
team,
to agree.
and coming out and possibly being traded come the offseason. And on the Colts side of things, a move that I thought was coming eventually. Pep Hamilton was relieved, of the play calling duties.
And that's Rob. And then now the former Browns coach is taking over. And then I saw on Twitter that Golden Tate had 5 emojis as a reaction to all the changes that happened. I don't know if he's been on Twitter. If you look up Golden Tate, he had like the 2 surprise, all surprise emojis on his Twitter. But you could put Jim Caldwell on the top of that hot list. I guarantee you. I'm going to bet an hour and a half Jim Caldwell. After 1 hour after week 17, I guarantee he's done.
The whole team is done after week 17.
This has not
Tate
been
might be one of them putting up another 5 emojis in December. He might be gone too.
Yeah, this has not been a good year for the Detroit Lions, not the Jacksonville Jaguars. Wrong jungle cat there. But it's not been the year that the Lions were looking for. I thought this team would be a lot better than their current mark. They had replaced a great player in Ndamukong Suh with a very talented player, one of the better ones of the last 10 years, a defensive tackle in Haloti Ngata, guy who hasn't had the impact they've been looking for this season. The offense has struggled. Golden Tate hasn't been involved. He's been very outspoken, frankly. A little disappointing. Notre Dame alumni there, and wide receiver, tight end university, not representing properly, but I'm sure he'll get back on his game. But Matthew Stafford has struggled. The offensive line has had all kinds of issues. So Detroit moving away and looking towards those top picks in this year's draft class. And, if Stafford is on the move, they might be interested in a quarterback to bring in and try and help this team out. On the Colts side of things, me personally as a fan, I was never a huge proponent of the way Pep Hamilton had called the games. I didn't love his playbook, and I felt there was never enough balance between the run and pass. Andrew Luck had a great year last year, an MVP caliber year with him as the offensive coordinator, but I like I like the idea to move on from Hamilton, However, I'm not so sure Rob Chudzinski is going to be the guy. I know the Colts are going to give him some serious look to be the next head coach of the team. Me personally, I'm not a huge fan of that idea either. This guy failed pretty miserably with the Browns. Your thoughts on that, guys? Dan, go ahead.
Well, you have to admit this way. I think Chuck Pagano is a good coach. I gained a lot of respect for him. And obviously, with what he went through, and then leading them over that hurdle, he got them to the AFC Championship game, which that was a mess. We all remember that. And
I'd like to not remember it.
And you guys are happen to be tied for first, shockingly, 3-5 with Houston. But
it's just, I think part of the problem with this team is they're coming in under the owner's expectations. For me, I didn't think they were a Super Bowl caliber team, but it clearly has not panned out. We're going to take a break here on WMSC. We'll be right back after.
Do you make music? Are you in a band? Or maybe you're a solo artist? Do you want more exposure? Look no further. Montclair State University's Underground Radio, 90.3 WMSC, is always looking to put new music on the air. So artists, listen up. If you would like to send your music to WMSC, you can send a digital copy to music@WMSCradio.com. Keep in mind that music with offensive language or content will be subjected to FCC regulations and censored if needed. Questions, call the request line 973-655-4256. So what are you waiting for? Send in your music to 90.3 WMSC now. And 32 minutes past the 5 o'clock hour, you're listening to SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. 973-655-4256 is the number to call to join the conversation. We got a nice Bon Jovi track going on in the background.
I'm loving the JBJ today, man.
Exactly. Sean McChesney, Nick Flaherty, and Dan Collins in the studio. Still got a lot of football to talk about. We covered up Jets-Giants already. Both of them have a must-win, and I literally mean must-win situation.
I think it's not so much a must-win for the Giants as much as the Jets, to be honest with you, Sean.
More of the Jets than the Giants, because the Giants, everybody in the NFC East is going downhill. It's just a matter of who's the most successful out of the worst, and that's going to win the division.
Right.
You guys' opinions there, but I think this is a must-win because you got potentially 7-0, maybe 8-0, 8-0 New England coming into town.
No, yeah, for the Giants, it's less of a must-win though.
Yeah, to me, Tampa Bay is a must-win because you win Tampa Bay, you go in with a 5-4 record with confidence against the Patriots. Mm-hmm. But if you go in on 4-5, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. But
it'll take a lot more than confidence to get past New England.
But knowing this Giants team, I don't know. We have to play it by ear. But I'm pretty confident they can turn this around Sunday. But to me, this is a must-win. And the Jets, this is a must-win because they got Buffalo, we got New England. So I think this is must-win for both teams.
Right, and now we'll just jump into the rest of Week 8. Teams that impressed and teams that didn't. I'll start. And the first team that I got to go with, the Denver Broncos. You know, in a game where I picked the Packers easily because they're explosive offense, I thought they would get by the Denver defense. For a Denver defense to hold Aaron Rodgers to 77 passing yards, and the Broncos, the great defense that they had, Peyton didn't throw any touchdowns, but he looked much better. C.J. Anderson, I think, finally checked himself in after 6 years, and Ronnie Hillman had the game of his life. Last time Denver went 7-0 was the year 98 when they won the Super Bowl after they finished 14-2. So you know what? Props to this Denver Broncos team because that was a must-win game at home. Not a lot of people thought they could win, and the offense woke up a little bit, could have did a little better, but still a very convincing win over a very dominant Green Bay team.
You have to go. I didn't think this was going to be 19 points. I didn't even think Rodgers was going to be held to 77 yards. And
I didn't expect.
This goes shows that the Broncos defense is strong. The offense, could be a bit better, but the wins count. That's the reality part of it. But now they're going to Peyton Manning's old home, Indianapolis, and
great.
I don't know if anyone
can't wait.
Great.
I don't know if anybody was checked Twitter. Just a little funny. Wade Phillips, the defensive coordinator for Denver. He put up a tweet, kind of.
Wade Phillips has a Twitter?
he put up something.
And I don't follow this. Oh my goodness,
No,
I'm going straight there.
So he put up a tweet that said like chicken parm, you taste so good. The whole thing with the Peyton Manning thing, it said
Listen,
with
chicken
cheese on
parm
top.
is so good. So stop when you try.
No, man, it said like with a little bit of cheese on top, making reference to the cheesehead thing with the Packers.
Right. I get it.
But that's what I just wanted to put out there. I thought it was pretty funny when I saw it. But yeah, this could be a possible Super Bowl matchup. I don't know. This was really a decent game to watch, and now. It just makes you wonder if that Denver defense is just really is what's keeping them perfect.
Yeah, and also both of you, great job on your board times this week.
Thank
a
you.
lot of
Thank
improvement
you.
on both sides. Both of you are on your way on the right track, so great job for both of you.
Thank you.
So, with that, I thought Denver was very impressive, and another one on the upset side, you got to look at the Buccaneers. They walked right into Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Winston looked better, throwing 177 yards at a touchdown. He rushed for a touchdown. They capitalized on all 11 penalties that Atlanta committed. And if it wasn't bad enough that Atlanta just couldn't get out of the gate, the Tampa Bay defense did amazing, causing 3 forced fumbles, which helped Tampa win in overtime.
Yeah, I agree with you on Tampa, and I completely agree with you on Denver. Those were actually my two, so thanks for stealing them, Sean.
No problem.
But Denver's defense is every bit as good as
Great minds think
advertised.
alike.
Exactly. But Denver's defense is every bit as good as advertised. They rush the passer tremendously well. They're great against the run. Their secondary is playing fantastic. At Talib, Chris Harris, everyone involved this year. Brandon Marshall, the linebacker, not the wide receiver. Trevathan's back. They are really rolling on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, it was by far Peyton Manning's best game of the season. He took throws downfield. He hit those throws. I know he threw the 1 interception and no touchdowns, but he looked a lot more like the guy they were hoping he could be this year. So I think it's a really nice performance for Denver. And once again, Aaron Rodgers not only struggled away from Lambeau Field, but he struggled against an above-average defense. Here we're talking a top 10 defense. He was really, it was not even close to the player that we expect him to be.
Right.
Just a disappointing performance all the way around on his end. I think there's a lot more work to be done with Green Bay than people want to admit. There's a lot of people who think that they're a Super Bowl contender right now. I don't really think that that's going to be the case. I haven't been high on them all year, frankly. I think Arizona, to me, is really the most well-rounded and to me, the best team in the NFC. I know they've had some bad losses, but I don't really trust the Packers that much. And frankly, this is just another performance against the top 10 defense where Rodgers struggled. And on the Tampa Bay side of things, as you said, Sean, they took advantage of Atlanta's mistakes. They went into an extremely hostile environment and got a big win. I was very impressed with the play of Jameis Winston.
Dan, what are your thoughts?
Well, you look at how really good Atlanta is, and I had Atlanta in this game. I didn't think Jameis Winston.
I think the world had Atlanta in this game.
On Yahoo Pick'em, it was 98% Atlanta,
Oh, wow.
2% Tampa.
I think this obviously is a huge win just for Jameis Winston, just his image as a NFL player, and obviously he's going to have an opportunity against the Giants, which I don't know what to expect, but should be. In other words, they really a real positive step forward, a good rebound from the Redskin meltdown.
Right, and, a lot of great teams, a lot of upsets last week, a lot of impressed, but let's get to some who disappointed us. And, Nick, because I stole your 2 picks, I'll let you start this one off. Who disappointed you the most
Well,
last
I'm
week?
probably taking one of yours, but the Jets were a massive disappointment.
But go ahead. I left the New York teams out because we gave them their own segments this week.
This is true. This is a good point, but the Jets were awful.
Mm-hmm.
That was a very, very bad performance on the road. And I know Oakland is on the upswing, and for as much as we have complimented Oakland on this show today, the Jets were not even close to good enough.
No.
The effort level was poor. The fundamentals were poorly executed. It just wasn't a good enough
The Jets gave them the game,
performance.
and on top of that, you played Geno Smith, so that's really all I got to say about that.
And I was also extremely disappointed, and this one might be a little outside the box, but I was extremely disappointed in the San Diego Chargers. I know they are a team that is ravaged by injuries and has lost players repeatedly over and over and over and over again, and this week they lost 2 more. And they got some guys back, and then you throw in Keenan Allen is out the rest of the year, the league's second leading wide receiver. The Chargers, to me, they're a very talented team that, without these injuries, would have been on a much different course this season. They're struggling right now, but I thought they could go into Baltimore, get a win against a struggling Ravens team. And, I mean, this was just... The defense was not good enough at all. Jason Verrett was beat. You figured once Steve Smith left the game with the injury, which might be his final play as an NFL player, and what a career he's put together. But as soon as Smith left, you figured the Chargers might actually have a very good chance to win the game. They had less weapons to cover for Flacco to throw to, and it just was not a good enough performance. I understand it's on the road, and the Ravens are hungry to keep fighting, but my goodness, you have to be better than that.
Yeah, and just for me at least, and I have two very different ones, so we thought differently on this one. The first one I got to say is the Pittsburgh Steelers. It was a must-win game in Pittsburgh, an undefeated Cincinnati team. Big Ben is back. Everything's great in the Steel City, and then that's when the world went crazy. So the Steelers lose Le'Veon Bell for the year, knee injury. I believe that was in the first or the second quarter that happened. Roethlisberger comes back and enlightens the Pittsburgh crowd with throwing 3 interceptions in the second half. Andy Dalton, he didn't look great, but he capitalized. And, they just capitalized on every mistake that Pittsburgh made. It was one of those games where I believe I picked Cincinnati to win, but it wasn't a comfortable pick because you were in Pittsburgh.
I had the Steelers in this one, and I really thought at home with Ben back, they would put together a big-time performance. And they just, and I completely agree. Bell going out, it really hurt them in the second quarter. It took away their balance offensively. But Roethlisberger missed open receivers. Now, I understand.
Like crazy.
He was hurt. I think he's still, fighting with the leftover of that injury.
I think he came back too soon. I think he was forced back.
He might have come back. I don't know. I wouldn't say forced back. I think he forced his way back in.
That's what I'm trying to say.
This game mattered so much in terms of trying to chase down the Bengals for the division. Now the Bengals are 7-0. Pittsburgh 4-4 with a loss of them already. And 2 losses inside the division. One to Baltimore as well. A bad loss that one was. So this is a disappointing performance at home from this team.
Yeah.
And Sean, what's your other one for us?
Well, let me just set the picture here. I was watching, I believe it was after my sister's confirmation. I turned on the TV, and I was seeing this extra inning marathon. It was like 12-10. And then I realized it was the Dallas Cowboys game. 13-12. Really? I mean, it was one of the most boring and most pitiful performances I ever saw Dallas put on the field this year. Seahawks defense held Matt Castle to under 100 passing yards. There was no spark in the stadium. The offense couldn't take advantage of every Seattle defensive mistake and Seattle offensive mistake. It was just a horrible game on both sides. You could even say Seattle was a disappointment this week, but I'm giving it to Dallas because they didn't come up with the win.
I can say one thing I don't want to keep referring to. I can't believe Pete Carroll just made the right decision on 4th down.
What, with the kick?
And it's kicking and not throwing on 4th down.
Well, it was because he knew Matt Castle was coming back in the game.
Yeah, there was no reason to go for it.
And just my overall take, it's honestly, I didn't think it was going to be this low scoring. I mean, I thought maybe the home crowd would spark them up. And obviously the Hardy interception, I literally thought they were going to pound this thing in. And I was getting the updates on my phone, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah. And you know what it was?
Surprised.
Because I knew that going for the field goal was a good idea. Me, my dad, and my cousin were placing bets how many passes it would take for Castle to finally throw the game-winning pick. So that's how much confidence I had in Matt Castle in the last minute of the game. You know what it was, too? When the Mets lost on Sunday, I was like, all right, well, baseball's over. What else in the world? Well, the Cowboys are 2-5. Ah, crap.
You have the Rangers.
Well, we got the Rangers. That's one thing.
Yes, we do.
It's still too early in the season for me, though, to really get into it.
Well, it's no excuse.
I know for you, you're a massive hockey fan.
Yeah,
I'm not
I
as
know.
big. You see, I learned all my hockey from you. That's the thing. So, no, and I'm dead serious, too. So it's going to take a little bit longer for me to get into it. I'm sure once, baseball finally subsides, because I still feel like there's still stuff going on. I'll start getting more into it. In fact, I had MSG on last night, but I had to watch the Knicks instead. So I watched Forrest Gump after that.
Yeah, that was a good move. We needed that for class. But
it's a good, easy quiz grade.
The Cowboys are not there for you right now, Sean. After
not.
the baseball season ended, it's an unbelievable, really story the way the Cowboys have fallen from. I mean, to me, going into the season, I thought they had a chance to go to the Super Bowl, really, out of the NFC and represent the conference. Mm-hmm. And through the first 2 weeks, they really executed a lot of the things that I thought they would do well. And you look at this team now, the defense is playing really, really well, actually. They're forcing turnovers. They're getting to the quarterback, guys like Gregory, DeMarcus Lawrence, Tyrone Crawford. I know Greg Hardy is a loose cannon, but he put together a really nice game last week. The secondary is playing much better. You have Morris Claiborne in the fold. Church is playing well. You've got Wilcox. Carr has been, well, he's Derek Carr. No, sorry, Brandon Carr. Why keep going? Derek Carr. Brandon Carr.
Derek Carr's actually pretty good.
We just insulted Derek Carr with that one. Sorry, Derek Carr.
We apologize, and we hope you do well in Pittsburgh this week. I'm already spoiling a pick.
But Brandon Carr, he has struggled at times, but overall, I don't think he's killed this team.
Right.
Just such a struggle, offensively, and the play calling. I got into it prior to this on the break, before our break, when I was operating the board. Just the play calling is so conservative. They don't take the reins off. There's nothing to do. And I get it. I understand Matt Castle's not someone to take the reins off of. He's not going to make all the throws. But if he's going to play, you got to let him do something.
No question about it. I mean, like I said, I'm not a Dallas fan, but it's like, who do you go with against Philly? I mean, just your perspective.
Who do you go with to win the division at this point? I don't even know.
I mean, it's still wide open for you guys, and don't lose hope.
Exactly. It is, and that's why I'm not losing
There's
hope, because
still
it's
a chance,
so wide open.
It's a slim chance to begin with, but this week is the breaking point.
Yes.
And the only reason it is
on
a
both
slim
sides
chance,
of Philadelphia and Dallas.
It's a little bit better
More on
off for
Dallas.
Philadelphia, but because they have the win against the Giants in the division.
Right.
But you look at the situation for the Cowboys, right? They're 2-5 right now. So let's say they win this game, they get to 3-5. They do have Miami, they do have Tampa after this. Games that could be potentially winnable. The problem is when Romo comes back, it's Thanksgiving Day against Carolina. They've also got a trip to Buffalo on the back end of the schedule, a trip to Lambeau Field, and a game at home with the Jets. So this back end of the schedule doesn't get any easier. You throw in 2 divisional matchups with the Redskins, it's not any easier. It's a slim chance to climb back into this thing at best. They've got to fight hard here. I don't think it's feasible. They've got a chance if they win this week, but this week is the very last chance they've got.
I agree. We'll take a quick break here on the show. Coming up, we will finish up our Week 8 recap. We'll preview things to look at in Week 9. We'll have our picks at the top of the 6 o'clock hour. Sean McChesney, Nick Flaherty, and Dan Collins on SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. 973-655-4256 is the number to call to join the conversation on 90.3 FM. Back after this. So 48 minutes past the 5 o'clock hour, you're listening to SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. 973-655-4256 is the number to call. Sean McChesney, Nick Flaherty, Dan Collins, and Sean Martin is now joining us. Sean, what's going on, man? You're on the program.
Not much. Thanks for having me.
No problem, man.
We know why you're here, Sean. It's okay.
We know why
Hey,
you're
Sean.
here.
You always know why I'm here.
Exactly. What's on your mind, man?
My question's for you, and then everyone else can answer this as well. But talking about the Cowboys, and you'll know best as a fellow Cowboys fan. I know Scott Linehan's a guy who's been under fire a lot these past couple weeks, and for the reasons Nick mentioned with the play calling. Do you think he should be fired, which a lot of the fans are saying he should, or personally, I think he's still a great play caller and just hasn't been able to use the talent that's on the field in these past couple of weeks because it isn't there, without Romo and without a full strength there. So I do not want to see what this offense looks like without Scott Linehan, but I know a lot of fans are calling for him to be fired mid-season.
No, I don't agree with that. I think, again, Sean, it all comes down to the injuries. I still think he's a great coordinator. I still think that, he has something left in the tank. And, it just comes down to the fact that the Cowboys have been brutally assaulted with injuries this year. Romo's out. Bryant came back. He's questionable again this week. Hopefully he's going to play. But you know what? You just take a look at everything, and, I don't think it's his fault. Again, I just think it's, just a matter of that there's nobody there for him to coach. What do you guys think?
I agree with you, Sean. I don't think Linehan has to go anywhere. I'm not even so sure that he is the root of the problem. I understand the play calling is so conservative, and it isn't really the right way to call a game. My biggest issue is not the conservative play calling. Really, the issue lies with the fact that they go away from what's working. They go an entire drive down the field. They run the ball. They're down inside the 10-yard line. They have McFadden, who is a bowling ball. He's playing great in behind that offensive line. You see the blocks let L. Collins through this past week in Seattle. He decleated 2 more people. Him and Jeff Heath are taking people out left and right out here. But the fact that Jeff Heath, the first thing that he's ever done well in his Cowboy career was destroy Ricardo Lockett's career.
He almost killed somebody. It's the best thing he's ever done in his career.
But I don't think it's fair to just throw Linehan under the bus here. If you had Romo, and I think this team would stack up very well against the top teams in the league if they had Romo as their trigger man. It's unfair to toss Linehan under the bus with Castle and Brandon Weeden playing quarterback.
Right.
And as for Brandon Weeden and Matt Castle, Jerry Jones needs to leave it alone. They are not Roger Staubach. They are not Troy Aikman. They are not Danny White even, okay? Let's not go as far to even bring those guys into this conversation. They're not even Quincy Carter, okay? Let's leave it where it is. These guys aren't good enough.
Right.
So he needs to take a back seat and go back to the owner's box and have Steven clean his glasses because this is getting out of hand.
Dan, what are your thoughts?
Well, Sean, now, my opinion, like I said, I'm coming from a Giants fan. Scott Linehan is not the problem. You guys would probably be running away with this division if you didn't get hampered with the injuries.
We would be.
Exactly.
And now, actually, I just saw something on the Dallas Morning News. They said Scott Linehan set the tone early at a Cowboy at a practice, and he's trying to like really just he set the tone early. It said
He was yelling at Christine Michael.
Yeah, they said shouts, a few expletives, but
Yeah, we're a
an
family
FCC
show.
regulated show here.
We are a
people.
family sports
this-
show. There's
this-
a lot of
I
yelling
know.
when the Mets lose the World Series.
I meant that was the title thing. But honestly, this game, this is probably going to be. I'm not going to go say season deciding. This is just going to. In other words,
It's going to further the pain, all right?
if-
That's the bottom line here.
Yeah.
If they win this, they're in decent shape. If not, then it's just going to make it even tougher. And then because then it's Philly, then it's Tampa Bay, and then Miami, and then you go to Thanksgiving with Carolina.
By the way, just a quick correction. I had said before Romo is back on Thanksgiving. I had that wrong thanks to a text message from my father, lifelong Cowboy fan. Romo is back the 22nd against Miami in Miami, so it is a week ahead of schedule.
Right.
As they were
Yeah,
originally
he's out
planning
with
for
Florida
Carolina.
and barring any setbacks, but he's been throwing this past week, so hopefully it
That's
doesn't
the
look like
best
he's
news
gonna
they
have
could
any
have gotten.
setbacks.
I mean, frankly, it's unfortunate it's gotten to the point I was watching, and believe me, I don't know why I was watching the SMU college football game against Wake Forest last week, but it was on at the sports
What in the
bar I was
world?
at. Don't ask, Martin.
Sounds
it's all right.
boring.
But the point is there was someone in the crowd because it was Halloween wearing the sweatshirt that Romo was wearing with the hat on backwards and her arm in a sling, and it's just at the point where it's unfortunate to watch.
I almost did that for Halloween, but I decided to dress up as somebody from The Outsiders instead. So,
You gotta come pick up your sunglasses, Sean.
yeah, I know. I left them in your room. So,
Are you two with your personal conversation done
Anyway-
here? Anything else, Martin?
anyway, yeah, Martin, before I let you go, man, what are your expectations for Sunday night? It's a big game in Dallas, Philadelphia. We beat them last time, but again, we had half our team last time.
Go ahead, Martin. Say it. The Cowboys are going to win.
What do you expect?
Well, they will, and I expect Marco Murray to not be remotely effective in his return. I think the Cowboys' defense will be ready for him like they were back in week 2. I've been preparing a highlight reel of him going backwards the whole week, which I can't wait to post over InsideTheStar.com.
I just can't listen to the Chris Collinsworth. We'll have to hear about it so many
That
times.
was one of the greatest catches I
you
ever
know,
seen.
Al.
The Eagles' passing offense definitely, if they make the adjustments to not get Bradford killed, which our defensive line seems to like to get a lot of pressure but not actually get sacks, so they should be able to do that decently effectively. Does worry me. They'll put some points up on the board, but I think the Cowboys' offense will finally do enough to get a close win.
Dan Collins is over here doing the Odell Beckham
He
one-handed
can't-
catch.
He
He did it
that's
one
what that
time.
was.
Yeah, what did you think it was?
I thought he was raising his hand
No,
to jump in and
No.
offer
That
was-
some point.
I knew what he was doing. I was like, calm down. He did it one time.
No, the reason why he brought up it was because he brought up Chris Collinsworth, and he said what he had said about the catch.
Oh,
He just chime in.
okay.
No,
I-
nothing. No, listen.
Meanwhile,
I
he tries
know,
to do it every week and drops his
I know.
home.
I know.
Yeah,
Chris
I agree.
Collinsworth brings Odell Beckham into just about everything, but beyond that, nothing was worse
I had to-
than the New Orleans Dallas game a few weeks ago when he couldn't stop talking about Delvin Bro, Al, and how great
Yeah.
Stephon
Yeah.
Anthony is.
So apologies, both of you. I just had to get that out of my
Exactly.
moment.
Hey, Sean, I appreciate the phone call, man. I appreciate it. Hope to talk to you soon.
Anytime.
All right, thanks, Sean. That was Sean Martin of WMSC Sports, our sports media coordinator, giving us his insight on the Cowboys-Eagles this week. We'll be taking a quick break here. Coming up, we will have our NFL picks at the next top of the 6 o'clock hour. A lot of big games this week. A lot of tough teams to analyze here, just
and
like
we
last
get
week.
it going tonight with Johnny Football, everyone.
Johnny
Are you
Football.
excited as I am?
Did I spoil my pick for that already?
Oh, boy.
Oh, I can't wait.
I
Oh,
can't
boy.
wait for it. You know what? I really cannot wait for this one. Johnny Manziel's first NFL start
It will
came
be
against...
must-watch TV, good or bad.
Good or bad, yeah, absolutely. Johnny Manziel's first NFL start came against
The Bengals.
the Cincinnati Bengals. Was it in Cincinnati?
It was in Cleveland, and
It was in
hopefully it
Cleveland.
goes better than that time.
Yeah, hopefully. 55 minutes past the 5 o'clock hour, you are listening to SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. 973-655-4256 is the number to call. Sean McChesney, Nick Flaherty, Dan Collins. Back after this. Top of the 6 o'clock hour here on 90.3 WMSC, Upper
You
Montclair,
hear the
New
music.
Jersey.
It's time, everyone.
It is time. You're listening to SMC Sports
The
until
time.
7 p.m. Tech and Tunes with Nick Franciosa is up next at the beginning of the 7 o'clock hour. Right now, Sean McChesney, Nick Flaherty, Dan Collins. It is time for NFL picks for Week 9. We're bumping it up a little bit earlier today. We realized 3 of us takes a little longer, so we will do that. First game tonight, it is Johnny Manziel and the Browns. Not McCown. Money man, Johnny Manziel.
The rest of the way, mind you.
Rest of the way, is that right?
He's getting the job the rest of the way. They
I
want
would
to
have to
find
think
out
so.
if he can be the guy.
And you know what? You're going to find out tonight against the undefeated Cincinnati Bengals. I'll start it off. I don't see any hope in hell for Johnny Manziel tonight. Now, I do think he's got some potential. I think he's much better than last year. I expect a closer game than the 30-0 shutout in Cleveland last year, where he threw, I think it was about 2 or 3 picks. But
Yeah.
as for this game, you know, I still don't think the Cleveland offense is there. Cincinnati is thriving on all cylinders. They came off a big win at Pittsburgh last week. As they come home, they're 7-0. I give this one to Cincinnati at home tonight.
I agree with you. I like the Bengals, but I'm not saying close, but I think that the Browns will be in this game
It
for
will be
a while.
closer. Now, I'm not saying close. I'm saying closer.
Yeah. I like Manziel with this team in the sense that I think the players respond to him as the quarterback. We've seen it on a couple different occasions when he's gotten into games. He's been a shot of energy for them. The one game he started this year against Tennessee, and I fully admit it, is Tennessee. They're nothing special, but he did a very nice job. He threw 3 touchdowns. He avoided mistakes. They only threw the ball 15 times, but he was smart with the ball. He and Travis Benjamin had this unique Zen connection working for the two of them. They're running the ball actually relatively well. They got that good offensive line, components of which they didn't trade away. It was an interesting story this week that they almost traded Joe Thomas to Denver in a deal right at the deadline. They couldn't get the deal done under the wire. I think Johnny Manziel will be okay tonight, but I like Cincinnati at home. Just too much for the Browns to handle. Dan, your pick.
Well, not trying to make this go in the way where I was never particularly that fond of Johnny Manziel. Just, I guess, his antics off the field.
Hurts.
I think Cleveland, they're slightly improved, but I like Cincinnati staying perfect after tonight. I think Andy Dalton, A.J. Green, and just all that there. And obviously, this is a team, like, you got to forget this Bengals team, if you got to remember what they did to Seattle, like, last month. You got to remember all that. I think we're going to see at least one perfect team after tonight. We're going to see Cincinnati over Cleveland.
You know, I watched this game. I'm going to watch this game pretty closely, and I will obviously I watch as many of the games as I can when I have the opportunity. But I've always been a fan of Manziel's. I enjoyed watching him play in college at A&M. It was a lot of fun. It was an exciting brand of football. He brings that here. And listen, the Browns, they're pretty much going nowhere. They're out of this thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't do them any harm to put him in and see if he can be the guy over the long haul for this team going forward. They have to figure out if he could potentially be their starter. I don't think he will be, but they have to give it a fair shot and a fair look. And I personally, I'll be rooting for him tonight to see him succeed.
We'll see what happens. First Sunday game, Miami at Buffalo. So AFC East divisional matchup, always a tough game to pick. I like the Bills at home. They've been struggling a lot lately. I expect them to pick it up this week. You know, this is all on Rex Ryan. Now the pressure's on him. Miami's been playing decently well despite their massacre in New England last week. But you know what? Again, I expected that in New England, but they've been playing decently well. I know it was Houston and Tennessee, but, you know, it's good starting points for them. This is Buffalo. They've been struggling a little bit. I expect a close one. It could go either way, but if I had to make a pick, I'm going with the Bills at home.
I am as well. I like Buffalo at home. It's been a rough couple weeks there. They need to get back on track here. They're not out of the wild card picture, nor is Miami. This is a big game for these two. The losers going to 3-5. So the Bills at home, you know, Rex Ryan, they got to clean up the mistakes. And he's talked a lot in the last week and a half about trying to cut out the penalties. I think they have a fair shot at doing that. And so I like the Bills at home. Shady McCoy's back. They're also going to have Tyrod Taylor back at quarterback. So give me the Bills at the Ralph pretty comfortably.
You got it.
Yeah, I'm probably sticking with you guys saying I'm picking Buffalo over Miami because, I mean, obviously you said they've been struggling, but just given the fact they're going to be in front of the home crowd, I think that's going to help them. I'll try to get some energy back with the team. I think we're going to see Buffalo. They're going to win, and they're going to take all the momentum into East Rutherford days after that.
Absolutely. So now here's an interesting one. Oakland at Pittsburgh. Now here's a game that I think is very interesting. Could go either way, but I am going with Oakland in this one.
Silver and black.
Silver and black. Derek Carr has looked absolutely incredible this year. Pittsburgh is going without Le'Veon Bell. They will do that for the rest of the season. D'Angelo Williams expected to be the starter. And Big Ben did not have a great showing against Cincinnati last week. Welcomed his fans back to Pittsburgh by throwing 3 interceptions in the second half and just completely giving the game away to Cincinnati. I don't think Big Ben is 100%. I don't think the defense is quite there yet. You got a lot of injuries on the Pittsburgh side. Again, Le'Veon Bell being one of them for the rest of the year. Derek Carr has looked incredible. The Oakland defense, Charles Woodson leading the charge. 5th interception last week against the Jets. He has the most in the league so far. You take a look at Latavius Murray, who's running up and down the field like crazy.
He's really impressed me this year. I think
he really has.
He was excelled at the end of the season last year in the closing weeks. Excuse me. He looks even better.
Mm-hmm. I have to say. So give me Oakland on the road in Pittsburgh this week. I expect Pittsburgh to lose 2 straight at home.
Well, we're in complete agreement so far, Sean. I like the Raiders as well here. They are playing at a really high level. The offense is executing lights out right now. AC/DC, everyone else involved, whether it's Holmes and they had Tywan Jones ran through the entire Jet defense. And yes, I grant the Jets did not put forth their best performance, but I like the way the Raiders are going. They've been in really just about every game they've played this year except for the opener against Cincinnati. So I like the Raiders on the road. They'll get to 5-3 and reading the driver's seat for one of those AFC wildcard spots. Dan, how about you?
I'm gonna have to agree with you guys. Pittsburgh, obviously Ben Roethlisberger didn't look good at all last week in Cincinnati with the interceptions. Now, given the fact they lost Le'Veon Bell to that knee injury for the season, and you're going up against a rather hot Oakland team that I think has really shocked all of us. I like Oakland over Pittsburgh. I think Oakland's gonna increase the position for a wild card spot.
Absolutely. We have Tennessee at New Orleans. Tennessee 1-6. New Orleans at 500.
New head coach too.
Yep. It was a new head coach.
New head coach. Absolutely. You're right. So again, new head coach. It worked out in Miami. Do not expect it to work out in Tennessee. Nope. I'm taking New Orleans comfortably in this one. New Orleans has looked very well in the last couple weeks. Drew Brees had the game of his life last week. And by the way, we didn't mention this. An average 60 fantasy points, the most in history in fantasy football, was by Drew Brees. 7 touchdowns last week, 511 yards.
I had Romo 2 seasons ago against Denver when he went for like 59 or close to that number in the game against the Broncos.
And ended up losing that game,
ended up losing as well. But, that was an unbelievable virtuoso performance by Drew Brees.
Yeah, absolutely. And the defense, they could, I almost said looked great because I would be wrong. They could be a little bit better. I expect them to rebound against Tennessee, because you know what? And again, the Giants defense was just as bad. Oh. So I expect exactly.
Yeah, I got to agree with you.
I expect the Saints defense to bounce back. Offense stays in control. I expect them to win comfortably in the Superdome.
Well, we'll stay in suit here. I like New Orleans in the Dome. They'll get to 5-4 with this win, and they're going to be right in the mix for that wild card spot now. Drew Brees is seemingly fully healthy after all the talk that he was beat up and on his way out. He has found himself once again, and he is playing at a lights-out level. Really impressive to watch. Tennessee, a team that is just in complete disarray. New coaching staff. They're changing running backs now, and Marcus Mariota is still hurt. Zach Mettenberger staying in at quarterback, so I like New Orleans pretty comfortably at the Superdome.
Right.
All right, so you got Tennessee that's in absolute disarray. Ken Wisenhunt was out Tuesday. Mike Mularkey, did I pronounce it right? Mike Mularkey?
Yes.
Mike Mularkey now as interim head coach. I'm picking New Orleans landslide because Tennessee, they keep changing. It's not going to work for this and this time. New Orleans is going to beat them. They're going to get to 5-4, and as you said, Nick, it's going to get them perfectly in that wild card.
Well, it's a little bit harder in the NFC as opposed to the AFC picture because you have Atlanta 6-2. They look pretty comfortable. I know they are, kind of sliding a bit lately, but I do think they'll be that number 5 wild card team, assuming they don't come back to win the division. And then
which is still possible.
A game that we have to get to here is going to be a very exciting one when we do get to it. Minnesota, St. Louis. Those are the 2 teams playing for that 6th spot. So New Orleans is in a dogfight, but there's still a chance there.
Yeah, we'll get to Minnesota, St. Louis when we come back from the break in about 5 minutes. Real quick, Jets will host the Jaguars. Again, we had talked about this game before. It is a must-win for the Jets on all cylinders. You had that game against Oakland that they want to forget about. Fitzpatrick will play. I think that gives the Jets a slight advantage. expect it to be a lot closer than you think, but the defense, it should bounce back. If it doesn't, they're in a lot of trouble. I expect the defense to bounce back. I expect Revis to have a good game. I expect Cromartie to have a good game. I expect the pass rush to be on all cylinders. And more importantly, we got to see if Fitzpatrick can throw the ball. If he can, let's give me the Jets on this one. I take the Jets over Jacksonville.
Well, we've done it the last 2 weeks, and it hasn't worked, so I guess we won't do the chant anymore. But I like the Jets here. I like Gang Green at home. A bounce-back performance by the defense is the key here, as you said, Sean. They have got to be better. And frankly, there's nowhere to go but up after that performance, unless you're the Giants. The Jets have to be better on defense. I expect them to be. And so I think the Jets win this one. It's more of a defensive struggle, but the bottom line is they get this win. They get to 5-3. So give me Gang Green at MetLife. Dan, how about you?
You have to. Well, with Ryan Fitzpatrick playing, that obviously settles down a lot of that. We're going to lose Geno Smith starting ideology, and
which is always a nice thing to hear.
It's always a fun game to watch if you're not a Jets fan.
It's a fun game to watch if you're not a Jets fan. I agree. It's a heart attack if you are a Jets fan.
But back to that, if they're going to win, Fitzpatrick's got to play a heck of a game. The defense has to shut down Blake Bortles. They got to shut down the running game, the receiving game, and they got to come out ready to play at MetLife. I got the Jets winning. In this game, they're going to win. Take the momentum against Rex Ryan and company.
Expect a lot of Chris Ivory this Sunday. They have leaned on him when they've had to in the past, and with Fitzpatrick hurt, this is an opportunity to go right back to him. He's been the horse all year. I think he's got a chance to continue his performance. So
right, and you know what? I agree. Every time Ivory has had to step up, he has, and I expect more of that. At MetLife against Jacksonville. Here's an easy one before we go to break. Washington at New England.
Oh,
New England.
It was a good one to go to break with.
I'm going with the Patriots. They're coming off a big win against Miami. Washington coming off the bye, of course, so they're well rested, to go into New England and, in my case, get their butts whipped. I'm taking New England comfortably over Washington.
Yeah, comfortably isn't the word. I like the Patriots here at home. Washington, they've been playing better. They have actually the fourth-ranked defense in the league. They're great against the run. They're pretty good against the pass, too. They've been executing nicely on that side of the ball this year. And Kirk Cousins has, at times, showed some signs of improvement. But overall, I am going to go with the Patriots here. Comfortably is an understatement. They will roll home.
Dan, your thoughts?
Yeah, New England's going to roll over all over the Redskins with this win. Tom Brady, obviously, he's been playing a heck of a game. He gets it done no matter what it takes, what the situation is, he does. Washington does look a bit better, but I just cannot see the Redskins pulling it out in Foxborough. I got the Patriots going 8-0 into East Rutherford.
Exactly. We'll take a quick break, and that's a great segue. We will take a quick break here on SMC Sports. Coming up, we will finish up our NFL picks. For Week 9, we will preview what Week 9, what we can expect from all these teams. There are a lot of great matchups. Jets, Jaguars, one of them. Dallas, Philly, Sunday night. Denver at Indianapolis. So there'll be a lot of good matchups to kind of get into once we're done with picks, and we'll do that once we're finished. So we will take a quick break, 13 minutes past 6 o'clock hour. SMC Sports, 90.3 FM, 973-655-4256 is the number to call to join the conversation. Sean Martin says Patriots by 90. So
90, maybe 100.
Maybe, you know what? You may be on the ball there, dude. Sean McChesney, Nick Flaherty, and Dan Collins on the show. Back after this.
Hey, it's Jesse Leach from Killswitch Engage, and you're listening to 90.3 WMSC Upper Montclair.
$19 minutes past the 6 o'clock hour. You are listening to SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. Sean McChesney, Nick Flaherty, and Dan Collins. 973-655-4256 is the number to call to join the conversation. So we are in the middle of NFL picks. Last one we did Patriots, Redskins. We're all in agreement. Patriots by a landslide. So with that out of the way, we're on to our about halfway point. This is one that, Nick, you really wanted to talk about, and we'll start with this. St. Louis Rams, 4-3 on the season. They will face the Vikings in Minnesota. They're 5-2 on the season. I'll let you kick it off. What do you think?
I like the Rams here. It's on the road. It's at TCF Bank Stadium. It's a tough place to play, and the Vikings are red hot. I know they're 5-2. They're rolling along right now. Offensively, Teddy Bridgewater, I get it. To some people, he leaves a lot to be desired. He doesn't make all the throws. He's been getting a little better in that department, really, the last few weeks. He's been getting the ball to Stephon Diggs downfield. He's been incorporating Kyle Rudolph, big Notre Dame alumni there, so got to give the love. But he has been awesome at the tight end spot, and you throw in the play of Stephon Diggs at wide receiver, and Greg Jennings, of all people, actually has been doing a really decent job, actually, at wide receiver. I'm sorry, Mike Wallace, actually, not Greg Jennings. Mike Wallace. Greg Jennings is in Miami, but Mike Wallace has been doing a decent job at wide receiver for this team. But the Rams, with Todd Gurley and really the enhanced play of Nick Foles, which is picked up with Gurley taking over the running back position. Benny Cunningham, and Trey Mason are a nice three-headed monster. The Rams' defense is one of the better ones in the league, so I like St. Louis on the road here in a very, very close game.
I'm going to disagree with you. I'm taking Minnesota.
Finally.
Yeah, I know, right? So here's my thing. I've liked Minnesota over the last couple of weeks. St. Louis, yes, they're 4-3. It's going to be a very close game. I can agree with you on that. But the thing is, I've liked Teddy Bridgewater. The defense is starting to come around. Their O-line needs a little bit more work to protect Bridgewater, but I think they have enough to beat St. Louis. Don't get me wrong. I think it's going to be a tough game on both sides. Toughest of the year when it comes to these two teams. I think it's going to be a very close game. One of those
It's a massive game in terms of wild card spots.
Wild card spots, one of those games that they will have on in the last 4 minutes when the other ones are just blowouts. But I do expect that. But when it comes to who takes it home, I think with Minnesota at home, they got their fans. It's a tough place to play in. I'm taking Minnesota at home.
Not to cut you off here, Dan, I'll let you jump right in 2 seconds, but just a quick side note, I think what makes this game even more compelling, the Adrian Peterson v. Gurley. I'm interested to see how this goes. A little bit of a passing of the torch, I guess you could say.
I guess so.
When Peterson does reach the end, and I don't wish that's anytime soon, because I'd love to watch the guy play.
because you remember, I don't even think he's 30 years old.
No, but, when the time comes, he and Gurley, Gurley might be one of the guys to carry the mantle forward as the league's top back. So,
Dan, your
interesting game.
Well, now you got the Rams, who had themselves a pretty solid start. They're not at a bad spot. And the Minnesota Vikings have been playing the best football I think I've seen since Brett Favre's first season. And Mike Zimmer, Terry Bridgewater, Adrian Peterson, he's come back. That offense is just molded together. Obviously, they had to get out of Chicago with a late field goal. This game, I don't see being a blowout either side. I think it's going to be Minnesota taking a win at home by a late field goal or a late touchdown. It's going to be Minnesota over St. Louis, close score, and Minnesota will take this win with them.
Wow. So 2
for Minnesota.
You've got a prediction as how it'll end, too. I like it. So, again, a close game. Could go either way. Green Bay at Carolina, and Nick, you changed my pick in the office. And watch, now I'll lose this pick because of it. I'll take Carolina for the reasons that, you were absolutely right before. Cam Newton has been on fire lately. And you're at Carolina. Aaron Rodgers has a lot to answer for with being held to 77 passing yards against Denver in a game that I had picked Green Bay to win comfortably. Not close, comfortably against Denver. So you got Green Bay at 6-1 now. The defense necessarily needs a little bit more work. Yes, Carolina is 7-0. Personally, I believe this is one of their tougher matchups of the year. But in front of their fans, 7-0, I'm going to go with Carolina.
I like Carolina here. I know you alluded to some of the points I had made in the SMT office, but the Panthers are getting some solid quarterback play out of Cam Newton right now. They're running the ball well with Jonathan Stewart. They're kind of working all their different receivers into. Not their best receiving core, guys like Philly Brown and Ted Ginn Jr., but they're getting the job done. That's the important part. And on the defensive side, you have Josh Norman, who's going to take Randall Cobb out of the equation. Couldn't quite think of the name there for a second. But Josh Norman can take Randall Cobb out of the game. You throw in Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis up front in that front seven, getting after Aaron Rodgers with a subpar offensive line, one that was victimized by Denver's pass rush last week. I just like Carolina in this game. You throw in Rodgers' numbers against top 10 defenses, it's not good. It's not pretty at all over the last few years. So I like Carolina at home to stay undefeated.
Dan?
Now we got Green Bay going on the road, trying to rebound from their first loss of the season against a red-hot Carolina Panthers team that almost gave it away last week.
They did great hanging on, though, against all those veterans, though.
No question about it. I think this game, no, this will not be a blowout. This is going to be a close game. It's going to come down to either who wins turnover battle, whoever wins the offensive battle, the passing game, the rush game, whoever wins the turnover battle, the defensive game. I see the Carolina Panthers joining the Bengals and Patriots undefeated after this game against Green Bay. Carolina over Green Bay.
All right, so interesting. Now, Atlanta, and we also forgot to mention, Nick, I don't know if you touched on it, Green Bay's awful on the road.
Yes,
They do very good at Lambeau, but on the road,
numbers away from Lambeau.
They have a lot of trouble. You saw it in Denver Sunday night. They have a lot of trouble on the road. So I feel that'll play into a factor as well. That's another reason I like Carolina in this one. Atlanta at San Francisco. San Francisco has just turned into one of those teams that has become a mortal embarrassment in the National Football League. Atlanta is coming off a crushing loss against Tampa Bay. They're fired up. They want to go into their place. They want to. They want to beat them within an inch of their life. I like Matt Ryan, despite the fact that they lost in overtime. Matt Ryan put up a good performance against Tampa. Devonta Freeman, I expect him to have a big game. Atlanta defense should come alive. I take Atlanta comfortably.
I like Atlanta here, and this has less to do with the Falcons and more to do with Blaine Gabbert. The 49ers are looking at the draft and building towards having one of those top picks, and they're thinking quarterback. This 49er team is just not good enough at all. Jim Tomsula and company have just not been able to get the job done. You have Kaepernick struggling. He's going to take a back seat now going forward. And Blaine Gabbert is just not the guy. I know Atlanta plays down to a lot of their opponents, but I don't think they will lose this one. I like Atlanta pretty comfortably in Santa Clara at the site of Super Bowl 50.
I'm joining, guys. I've got Atlanta over San Francisco because the Falcons, despite the losses against Tampa Bay and New Orleans, they look 10,000 times better than San Francisco. They're in a state of disarray. Kaepernick's benched, and now it's Blaine Gabbert. And I think I talked to you guys. I saw this thing. I think it was Twitter. I forget when I saw this, but they were saying they put up the statistical chance for the 49ers to win with either Kaepernick or Gabbert. Each week had a better statistical chance of winning with Kaepernick. So I think they pretty much dug themselves a big hole there.
Exactly. We'll take a quick break here on the show. Coming up, we will finish our picks, and then we will tell you guys everything you need to know for Week 9 regarding matchups, who to watch out for, and blah, 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 blah. Week 9 is going to be a good one. I expect it to be good.
I didn't know that blah, 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 blah was included, but
blah,
all right.
Blah. Hey, come on. Charlie Brown's a classic, man. Blah, 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 blah. But you know what was weird, too? Week 8, we had matchups that we were tough to pick on because the matchups were terrible.
So bad.
This week, we have great matchups where we don't know who to pick.
Yeah.
So it should be a very interesting week and another surprise. 27 minutes past 6 o'clock hour, you're listening to SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. 973-655-4256 is the number to call to join the conversation. Sean McChesney, Nick Flaherty, Dan Collins on the show. Back after this. This year, over 13 million kids will be bullied at school, online, on the bus, at home, through their cell phones, and on the streets of their own towns. This is the most common type of violence young people face in this country. Research shows that when parents talk to their kids about bullying, their children are more likely to take action to stop bullying. Visit stopbullying.gov and thebullyproject.com/parents for more information and tips. And remember, when bystanders intervene, bullying stops within 10 seconds, 57% of the time. And that's a nice stat. In 30 minutes past the 6 o'clock hour, you are listening to SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. 973-655-4256 is the number to call to join the conversation. Sean McChesney, Nick Flaherty, Dan Collins on the show. Guys, we are in the middle of NFL picks. We left off with Atlanta, San Francisco. We're all in consideration that it'll be Atlanta this week. Here's one that's going to spin some heads, especially with Dan. I already know his pick. Giants at Tampa Bay. Giants come off one of their most brutal losses, I believe, in franchise history.
No question.
You have Tampa Bay with almost a comeback of the year against Atlanta. You guys first. What's your picks? Nick, you start.
I got to be honest. I'm not quite sure which way to go with this game. I've debated back and forth for the whole week. To me, the biggest problem with the Giants, besides the offensive line, is they don't have a great pass rush. You give a quarterback time particularly 5 or 6 seconds of clean pocket back there, he'll be able to make the throws. I'm going to go with Tampa here at home. They're playing pretty well right now. They've got some things figured out. I think Jameis Winston is starting to pick up the scent a bit. The Giants really need to step up on the defensive side of the ball. Someone's got to make a play. I know they have injuries. I know they're getting JPP back. Doesn't matter who, but someone has to do something. So I like Tampa at home in a close one.
Now, I thought another nickname for Jason Pierre-Paul. We got the 4-finger discount joining us.
Oh, wow.
Wow, that's brutal.
No, this was the first.
There was the line, and Dan just stepped right over it.
He stepped 50 feet over the
that
line.
was more over the line than Schefter with the medical chart.
And that was bad, too.
It was the New York Post last week. That was the front page of the sport. That was the
New York Post?
That was the front page of the sport.
It figures it's the Post.
For once, Adam Schefter looks like an angel. So, Dan, what's your pick?
Well, I can't go against my team picking the Giants, but for them to win, they have to be better on defense. It was garbage last week against the Saints.
Just garbage.
It's garbage.
I mean, it's one thing. If we did hold on, like say 49-42, defense was terrible, but they have to contain Winston. They got to watch Doug Martin. They got to contain all of those receiving. I'm not too familiar with the Tampa Bay in terms of like the guys.
There is a guy named Mike Evans, and there's also Vincent Jackson if he goes,
I knew
Austin Safar and Jenkins. So they got weapons. That's the thing.
You got to contain all them. You got to contain.
Defense has hard, too.
Got to contain Winston. You got to contain that. And the offensive line needs to step up. Sometimes it's just, I cringe every time Eli gets that snap because I think he's either going to get nailed by the defense or he's going to throw a really bad pass and get picked. That's what I've seen of him. Everything needs to click right. I mean, it's a mini Giant rant here, but yeah, I have the Giants if everything goes right, and I already know what you're gonna pick, Sean.
Yeah, I don't think anything's gonna go right for the Giants this week. I mean, I think they improve a little bit, but again, you're right, Dan. They could have scored 69 points on the Saints and lose that game or win that game 69-52. But the fact of the matter is, you gave up 15 points, and I'm not crediting the Saints either. Their defense was just as horrible. Only difference is Drew Brees drove the ball downfield faster than Eli Manning did. It looked like Wesley Montclair last week. It was awful. Yeah, no, believe me, Nick, it was really that bad. So I was there. So I'm going with Tampa in this one. Again, Jameis Winston looked good last week. Mike Evans and Vincent Jackson, obviously, if he goes, they got to step up and be big weapons. It's not an easy game for either of these teams. Don't get me wrong.
No question.
I expect a close one. Tampa defense has to show heart. They have to do what they did against Matt Ryan and try to force those fumbles. They did it 3 times, so they did a great job on that. Again, like you said, for the Giants to win this game, their defense has to be consistent. They have to improve. I don't think they will. I'm taking Tampa in a very close one.
So the point is the Giants just can't be garbage like they were last week.
Yes.
Pretty much.
And Deneau has to get a hit and throw out a runner at second base.
Give Delavadora credit.
Yeah, that too.
You say Caldwell, not Caldwell. Caldwell. I really don't care.
You gotta love the Pope.
Give Jason Giambi.
Yeah.
That's another one.
That's a good one. That is a good one.
What do you think is, would you think that the San Francisco Giants come to town and hang out with the New York Giants or vice versa?
Yeah.
It's like, but they have nothing to do with each other.
Makes you wonder.
There's the Giants picnic and the Giant relay race. You got the Giant raffle and the Giant breakfast the next morning, and then they go their separate ways.
Yeah.
It's a July weekend every year. I never even thought of it. Denver at Indianapolis as we have our small funny portion of the show. Denver at Indianapolis. This is a big game for both teams. Nick,
getting tired of picking these games.
It's your team, Nick. You're first.
Great. Denver, pretty convincingly. The Colts are in ruins right now. They are going through offensive linemen like you have never seen before. It's like my grandmother goes through Brillo pads. It's unbelievable at this point. They have spent so many different centers. This thing is a disaster. The Colts they're in complete disarray, as I had said before about a few other teams in today's picks. So I like Denver coming into the house that Peyton built and winning pretty handedly and avenging last year's playoff loss.
Dan?
And obviously, as Nick said, this is a rematch where this is not only Denver and Indianapolis, this is a rematch of the divisional game from last year when the Colts ended John Fox's tenure with Denver. Denver is looking really solid. Indianapolis is in a bit of ruins, unfortunately.
A bit.
It's
an understatement.
It's going to be Denver overwhelmingly, Peyton Manning's going to have a decent game. He's going to rebound from his first outing in Indianapolis. C.J. Anderson and Demaryius Thomas, I expect they're going to have good games. The defense is going to step it up. Aqib Talib, Chris Harris, DeMarcus Ware, they're all going to put up some good game. I got Denver winning this one.
Denver's defense has been incredible since week 1. You got to give them that. The offense looked a lot better last week. Peyton Manning didn't throw a touchdown, no, but he looked a lot better in completing passes and his accuracy. C.J. Anderson showed up for the first time in 6 years last week. After, I would start him countless weeks and he would give me nothing, and then I bench him and he gives me 18 points. So that's another thing. And Ronnie Hillman, of course, had the game of his life last week with running the ball. Despite C.J. Anderson having more yards, they both did great last week. I expect the same thing this week. You got an Indianapolis team who is struggling. They've already made changes. They have promised, or at least most likely guaranteed, to make more during the bye week. So give me Denver in a convincing one. I'm not going to say in a landslide, but convincing.
The biggest problem with this matchup for the Colts is the offensive line is not even close to good enough.
Yeah.
And the Denver pass rush is unbelievable with Ware and Sylvester Smith. Excuse me. You have a whole host of guys there. Trevathan and Marshall. I'm dizzy thinking about them right now. So Andrew Luck will be once again running for his life, and that's going to be a problem.
Sunday night, Philadelphia at Dallas. So this is a big one for both teams. More Dallas. You're going in at 2-5. Your quarterbacks don't know how to throw the ball. Your defense hasn't been great. You get Dez Bryant back. Hopefully, he's already questionable for game time, and he just came back. Philadelphia, of course, they're coming off their bye. They're 3-4. I'm gonna go first. It's very hard to bet against my own team. I won't. I'm gonna go with Dallas in this one. They beat Philly last time. I know that was in Philly with the rest of their team, but I expect some leadership to come back. Dez will hopefully be in the lineup. He can contribute a little bit. Expect Terrence Williams and Cole Beasley, if Castle can hit them, to have good games. And more importantly, for them to at least win this game, their offense has got to capitalize on Philadelphia offensive mistakes that they're going to make. You saw Russell Wilson throw the pick in Greg Hardy's hands, and they kicked a field goal, and Dan Bailey almost missed that too. So you know what? They really need to capitalize on those mistakes, and the Cowboys defense has to wake up. They did okay against Seattle, but the fact of the matter is,
I thought they played about as well as they could have.
As well as they could have, but you know what? With the offense not doing anything,
they were fantastic. I mean, the problem is the margin for error is so slim right now because they can't even risk giving up.
It's garbage.
There you go. It is garbage.
But for a Sunday night atmosphere, you're in Dallas. You beat Philly already. That should give you a little bit of motivation. I'll take Dallas in a big close one.
I think I have Philadelphia here.
Okay.
I think it's a close game. Mostly because the Dallas defense keeps it close. The Eagles, another team with offensive line problems. The Cowboys' pass rush is really solid, but I can't take Dallas. And I at home I'd like to really, but the way the offense is going, the way the quarterback play is, I just can't trust them to go out and get the job done here. So give me the Eagles in a close one in Arlington.
Well, not your most favorite. I mean, not so much favorable record-wise matchup. 3-4 Philly, 2-5 Dallas.
I thought Dallas was undefeated.
You wish. In your sleep.
I really do wish. Now, even in my sleep,
the Mets are still playing. So
no, even in my sleep, they blew Game 6. So you know what? What's your pick?
All right. I have Philly, but it's gonna be one of those. I'm gonna go on the long side. Close game, low scoring one. You're not gonna see too much. Hopefully, Dallas. If Dallas do well, the defense has to wake up. Now, actually, no, it's more the offense in this case wake up because of the missed red zone chances. Defense has to be a bit better. They did contain the Seahawks, but when you don't score in the red zone, that's trouble. I think for everything to go right for Philly, it's the same thing. They need to be able to capitalize on all their chances. DeMarco Murray cannot have negative whatever numerical value rushing yards. And keep in mind, folks, those who don't know, this is his return to Dallas for the first time since leaving as a free agent.
Gonna get booed out of the building, I guarantee it.
I watch him get like the game-winning score or something.
Most likely. That would be our luck.
I got Philly late score.
Okay. And finally, Monday night, Chicago at San Diego. This is a tough one on both sides. Chicago barely got the loss last week. They almost came back to beat Minnesota.
They've been playing better since Cutler came back.
Exactly. San Diego, of course, tough loss. I'm sorry, did they win against Baltimore?
They lost.
29-26.
Okay,
yep, I couldn't remember which was which. Tough loss at Baltimore. But you know what? This is a game I expect San Diego to bounce back. Yes, you're without Allen for the rest of the season. I expect Phillip Rivers to be the veteran he is to find a way around that. You're going to look at guys like Melvin Gordon. You're going to look at guys like that. As you're shaking your head, I expect the defense
He's a bust,
to be better.
I'm sorry.
You know what? Maybe he's a bust, but you know what? Expect him to be a key
They
weapon
do have
in this.
offensive line problems.
Offensive line problems. Expect Gordon to be a weapon or die trying. I'm taking San Diego.
I'm gonna go with you on this and take San Diego. I think you'll see a lot of Danny Woodhead. Really,
That
to be
another
honest
one,
with
too.
you, and they can work in Gates and they'll find some other guys. Unfortunately, they've lost Keenan Allen for the rest of the year, but I think Phillip Rivers had him despite the 2-6 record, and all the offensive line problems. I don't think you could point the finger at Phillip Rivers. He's been fantastic this year. He's had one of the best games the quarterbacks had in a long time until Drew Brees went on the field against the Giants last week, and Eli Manning for that matter. But I love the way Rivers has played all year long, and I think San Diego goes out, gets the job done against the Bears on Monday night in Qualcomm Stadium.
Dan?
I'm going with San Diego because Phillip Rivers, heck of a quarterback. He's put up some really good numbers in the past couple weeks. I mean, obviously the past 2 of 3 have been losses. The 500-yard game against Green Bay. Last week against Baltimore, which I'm pretty surprised they lost. Chicago, they've been playing better, but I think Phillip Rivers and the Chargers will have the upper hand at home.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. So we'll take a quick break here on the show. That's our picks. Coming up, we will review Week 9, or preview Week 9, everything that's supposed to go on, the matchups, who to watch, who's probably going to be a disappointment because there's a lot of them on the top of my head right now. One of them being Matt Castle. I expect him to have a bad game, but still expect Dallas to win somehow. Dan Bailey's going to have to kick a lot of field goals.
He can do it.
He can do it. He's done it before.
One of the best.
One of the best in the game. Most accurate in the game now, I think.
Yes, he is. And he has the most converted, I think, all time,
Yes.
actually. He took that over last season.
Yeah. So 43 minutes past 6 o'clock hour. You are listening to SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. 973-655-4256 is the number to call to join the conversation. Sean McChesney, Nick Flaherty, and Dan Collins on the show. Back after this.